Well, good morning, damn fam. Today, recording day is Tuesday, July 21st, 2026, and it looks like it's going to be a nice day here at the Beaver Lodge. Today on the show, we are going to talk about Donald Trump, IQ 47, losing his mind once again. And things are not going well at home, so once again, he has to take a swipe at his favorite punching bag, Canada. So, 50% tariffs on a whole bunch of things just announced yesterday. So we will take a look at that and talk about it. And we'll probably have time for a little additional Poilièvre Schadenfreude today. So grab your favorite bevy and make yourself comfortable because here we go.
Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 6 and episode number, I think it is 949 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada, always 100% Canadian and always beaverific. Today, recording day is Tuesday, July 21st, 2026, and it is a little bit of an overcast day here at the Beaver Lodge, but it still looks like it's going to be a nice sunny day. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronounce he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and not with me as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Dan fam, how is your mental health doing today? I have to say I am doing really well. Feeling a little refreshed, actually. Went over to Saint Eustache over the course of the weekend to visit my godparents and toured the town a bit. I don't know, I guess you call it a city more than a town. Um, well, I don't know if you call it I don't know. It's not that big. It's fewer than 50,000 people, but it is really quaint. It's on a body of water, and they have a beautiful boulevard and walkway, and they have the old part of town and some, um, in French, we call them frescoes, maybe? Uh, I don't I don't know what they call those. See, that's an art term that I learned in French in school and never learned the English equivalent in my life. But sort of murals. Um, that are painted representing scenes, from the past, and very, very beautifully done. There's an old mill in there and all that kind of stuff. So it was a beautiful little place. They have a good little thing going there in that in that part of the world, and got to spend more time with my godparents, got to meet more of their family, that type of stuff. And it was just, we were so well received, right? So it's, again, interesting things sort of acquiring. I know it's not my biological family, but it's sort of acquiring somewhat of a family of my own, more on my side, rather than just having to go to my Beaver Sweeties family, even though, like I said, they're godparents and whatnot, biologically related. But it's just, I don't know. It's very, very homey and comfortable and warm and welcoming. Let's put it that way. So it's been a positive experience so far. We had the opportunity to have dinner with my Beaver Sweetie's cousin and his wonderful wife on one of the nights. And then yesterday morning, we stopped to see a friend of his and her wonderful husband, their beautiful son, and their newborn, 3 months old. And I got to hold it, which means I've got fresh baby smell all over me, which means I have baby fever. And now I want one. So if any of you have one to spare that you're willing to give away, we're very eager to take one off your hands right now. For anyone's having a garage sale. I'm kidding. We do not buy children. Okay, it's a joke. It's a joke. But oh God, I love babies. I just do. Um, so yeah, that was nice. I got to hold one and snuggle one and all that kind of stuff. So that again, I'm in my happy place. I'm in my happy place. And we got back home last night and just in time for our friend Chad's birthday. Happy birthday, Chad! And had pizza and a movie, which was a lot of fun. And then got back home late last night and started to do some preparation for today's show, but I was, it was already past my bedtime when I was starting, so I needed a little extra time this morning. So I thank you for your indulgence. And as you can see during the credits, I fixed the coif because for some reason I had gotten a little disheveled, and it didn't take you long to point it out. All I'm saying. The damn fam demands fashion and glamour, and I did not provide it. Man. So yes, I had a absolutely wonderful weekend. Like I said, restorative. Did not follow the news as much as I normally do, obviously, because we were with family, and so therefore I left the cell phone in the room or in the satchel or face down to not be as distracted. But I do have a couple of things. Obviously, it wasn't completely out of contact. Um, but yeah, so we have a show for you today, and we are going to be talking about. I actually had some difficulty choosing today because there's a lot going on that, and of course we had the big defense announcement last week, and which we haven't covered yet, and then there's the whole Doug Ford, Ontario expense scandal, which originally, when I was programming the links, I was going to do, and I figured should probably be doing the tariff stuff because that's really, really hot right now. I mean, both of them are hot right now, but that's really hot right now. And have the Doug Ford one for tomorrow, so I can get more clips and stuff that I can add and follow that. Just because the Doug Ford one has been developing over a few days, and like I said, I haven't been around as much, whereas the tariff one, well, that happened last night, so I'm a little more up to date. A lot less has happened since that one was announced than the other one. So strategically, it involves less quantity of research when you spend a weekend deconnecting. Just a little bit about how the sausage is made. So I changed at the last minute here that to talk about the tariffs instead. But we will be touching on those other stories as well because they are pretty big. Um, yeah, seen some quotes here and provided by the Kit Uncover with regard to and various updates and things. that have to do with the announcement of this new tariff threat. So, I guess we might as well get into it because once again, um, these people south of us proving to us that in one way we are making the right decisions about not rushing in to make a deal with them because, any deal with them is going to involve concessions and the deal might not even survive 24 hours before there's another demand or request to amend the deal or, another curveball that comes from the other side. So we're in these Kuzma talks, and of course, it's this summer and it's wildfire season. And of course, as has been happening for many of the past years, we have lots of wildfires in Canada. And depending on the way that the wind blows on any given day, some of the wind blows the smoke down to the United States, and the United States, then people in the United States get upset about that. And then the performative politicians, um, the online influencers, the Twitter politicians, all decide that this is particularly in the mood where we're in, where apparently Canada is the big bad guy in the United States, in at least high U.S. administrative circles and on Fox News, an opportunity to punch down on big bad evil Canada, sending its big bag of smoke to the United States and inconveniencing them. Of course, simultaneously to this happening, right, there are wildfires on the West Coast where the wind directions and patterns are happening such that the smoke is coming up from the West Coast of the United States into British Columbia, and as well, some of the wildfires in Ontario have been fed by wildfires in Minnesota that have crossed the border this way and have merged with those ones to make them bigger. Right? And, of course, because conservatives always start history at the time that's most convenient for them, right? The forests are burning now, and the smoke is coming now, and it's all Canada's fault. And why are the forests burning? Why are the forests burning? Which country has been pumping GHGs into the atmosphere by the boatload for decades and decades and decades? Right. I'm old enough to remember, I think it was a one of these Save the Earth specials that had Bette Midler playing Mother Earth, and that was in 1990. We are 36 years from that. At 17 years old, I remember there being specials on TV asking people to do something, particularly the United States. Right? Um, I think Michael Dieter had a great political cartoon about it uh, just the other day, indicating that specifically, where showing the border. Oh, yeah, here it is. Show it to you here, kids and cubs. Very good work. Canadian border here. Got elephants talking to each other on the United States side, going, Canada's not doing enough to improve air quality, whereas we're seeing all the smokestacks coming up with the newspaper here. That's a headline that says Trump reverses green policies. Why are the forests burning? And then I think, like, I'm hearing some people giving some statistics that Canada has 27% of the world's boreal forests. When 27% of the world's boreal forests are in one country because that country is just so damn huge. Um, how do you think you go into the forests up north that are not accessible by road or anything like that and actually just rake up the brush and the leaves? It's the second largest country in the world, and there's about 40 million of us. How do you think that we rake all those for? In what universe do we even have enough bodies to do the type of forest management they claim is possible? I mean, it's again ridiculous. There are wildfires going on in the United States right now. A lot of Canadians making the point that when they had the Palisades fires in Los Angeles, we helped when we sent down equipment. People uh, also making the point that in Colorado, Canadian firefighter was there and gave his life in the process, according to Amy Judd from Global News. A BC pilot was killed battling a wildfire in Colorado when his helicopter crashed into a reservoir southwest of Aspen. Nicholas Dale, 56, from Sook on Vancouver Island, was helping to fight the Gold Mountain fire on Sunday when the helicopter went down. Quote, "Today we mourn the loss of Nicholas Dale, who gave his life while supporting response efforts on the Gold Mountain fire," Colorado Congressman Jeff Hurd posted on X. "My prayers are with his family and loved ones, his fellow aviators, and everyone in the wildland firefighting community grieving this tragic loss." Quote, "Nicholas answered the call to serve others, knowing the risks that come with that service. We are grateful for this sacrifice and we honor his memory." At a wildfire update, and this is when they saw on Tuesday morning, this was from July 14th, so this is about a week old now. At a wildfire update on Tuesday morning, BC Minister of Forests Ravi Parmar said he wanted to pass on his deepest condolences to Dale and his loved ones and friends. Quote, "I know the community of Sook very well, having represented it, and I know that they will wrap their loved ones and this family, Nicholas's family, during this very challenging time," he said. The Gold Mountain fire, discovered on June 27th, is an estimated 36,965 acres in size and 12% contained. And for those who are wondering, an acre, as I am because I'm not in agriculture, an acre is a unit of land primarily used in the imperial customary systems. Okay, that's why. 4,840 square yards or 43,500 square feet, or approximately about 4/10 of a hectare, which is 10,000 square meters. So there you go. Uh, so 4/10 of the 10,000 square meters, so 4,000 square meters about. Okay, that's a good guidepost. Um, so yeah, 36,965 times 4,000 square meters and only 12% contained. Um, According to the Canadian press here, it says that his body was pulled from his helicopter that went down in the Silverjack Reservoir in a remote area of southwest Aspen, Colorado, according to Adam Murdy with the Gunnison County Sheriff's Office. Murdy said Dale had been helping firefighters with the Gold Mountain fire, which has grown to about 148 square kilometers. Dale was the only one in the helicopter at the time. Photos shared Monday by the Sheriff's Office and other first responder agencies in Colorado show the first responders taking part in a procession of emergency vehicles honoring a fallen fire hero. Colorado Governor Jared Polis expressed his condolences to family and friends of Dale on the immense loss and ordered that state flags fly at half-mast. Quote, "We are committed to supporting our brave firefighters and their families, and the state stands ready to support any investigation into this tragic incident," Polis said in a statement. Jeff Hurd and Brittany Peterson, the U.S. Congress members from Colorado, were also among those who paid tribute to Dale. Representative Jeff Hurd wrote specifically, "Every wildfire season, aerial firefighters put themselves in harm's way to protect our communities and support the men and women of the ground battling dangerous fires." Sorry, the men and women on the ground battling dangerous fires. "Today, we mourn the loss of Nicholas Dale, who gave his life while supporting response efforts on the Gold Mountain fire. My prayers are with his family and loved ones, fellow aviators, and everyone in the wildland firefighting community grieving this tragic loss. Nicholas answered the call to serve others, knowing the risks that come with that service. We are grateful for his sacrifice, and we honor his memory." Um, The Federal Aviation Administration said the aircraft was a common aerospace K-1200 helicopter that crashed under unknown circumstances, becoming inverted, according to its preliminary report. The National Transportation Safety Board will lead the investigation, the FAA said in its statement. Dale's helicopter was owned by Georgia-based Helicopter Express, which said on social media that Dale leaves behind a wife and 2 children. Many large fires are burning across western states like Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico, while there are also wildfires burning in 8 other states from Alaska to Arizona. The Gold Mountain Fire was first detected on June 27th. 3 firefighters who were members of a crew that sometimes drops into remote areas by helicopter were killed on the same day battling the Knowles Fire in Colorado, Mesa County near the Utah border. The 3 firefighters, a man from Arizona and women from Alabama and Michigan, sustained burn injuries and were overcome by flames from the fast-moving fires. Okay, so that's a lot of people that are losing their lives trying to help others. So yeah, and I guess we get no recognition or credit from that from the United States. So we've been seeing all of this posturing and posing, and um, some people are even looking at writing bills. I think it is someone in Ohio um, who wants to actually formally introduce something to sanction Canada for wildfire pollution. Senator Bernie Moreno from Ohio. Um, yeah, U.S. Senator for Ohio, so he's not a state senator. Okay. Um, on his own website here today, Senator Moreno released a new bill to sanction Canada and Canadian officials for their failure to contain the wildfires polluting American skies throughout Ohio and greater United States. Senator Moreno's bill would sanction the Canadian officials responsible for the emergency and revoke their visas until the emergency has been lifted. And they're saying stupid things like, thanks to Canada's failed leadership, Ohio's skies are seeing the worst pollution on record, and Ohioans across the state are being subjected to hazardous conditions. We will not tolerate this incompetence. My bill will declare an emergency, sanction all Canadian officials responsible, and study a victims' compensation fund driven by imposing additional tariffs. So, yes, apparently, if there are wildfires, it's not due to climate change or sometimes arson or anything like that. It's the incompetence of the Canadian government. And apparently now we sanction other countries for having had natural disasters happen to them. That's interesting because, again, I would like to point out that if any of this stuff were actually reasonable, that the United States truly did want us to send people, the entire nation, be dropped into the nation's forests all the way up there to rake up some leaves and some brush so they wouldn't be inconvenienced by the result of them pumping GHGs into the atmosphere at ridiculous rates for decades upon decades upon decades, even though they've known for decades and decades and decades. They should probably stop. Right? Um, what do you do with that? What do you do with that? It's just dumb, and you move from um, you move to the other absurd. You move to the other absurd because I mean, if that's the games that we're going to start playing, I mean, we have plenty. Right? You want to sanction us for the smoke? Okay, we put equivalent sanctions for the GHGs. Nice negotiation. Come back to us when you got something serious to tell us. I mean, it's just dumb. It's just dumb. Now, of course, all of these moves, again, are always for domestic consumption in the United States. Donald Trump is not doing well. The Iran thing didn't do well. I think I saw a joke the other day. I think it might have been for Gavin Newsom, who said he finally recommended Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize because he managed to stop the same war 38 times. It's not going well for him in Iran. He's mentioning Greenland again. That's not going well for him because the world keeps on trying to making decisions that seem to be excluding the United States. Because they're going around them, right? NATO going with the Global Eye plane doesn't give anything to the United States. Canada going with the German submarine bid to then create the largest fleet that has absolutely nothing American in it is an interesting thing. Um, we have the deal, yes, for those armored vehicles that were announced, which is going to be about $2 billion going to the United States, which has again a lot of people screaming, "Ah, well, there you go, there's those all bow down again." So nobody said we weren't going to buy anything ever, ever, ever again from the United States. We said that the days of spending 70 cents of every dollar in the United States were over. We didn't say that we were going to henceforth spend zero, right? There are certain things that we are going to buy from the United States. But similarly, right, there was another $4.9 billion Army vehicle contract that was announced from which U.S. bidders are going to be expressly excluded. It was announced July 18th. Well, that one didn't get as much attention from the "oh, elbows down" crowd. Curiously enough. Lane, Ohio elected Vance. Enough said. Indeed. Yeah, indeed. Kitaviji points out Donald Trump having the lowest polling numbers in history at the moment. Uh, so that's not going well for him. The World Cup thing uh, didn't go well for him either. The event was not as big success as they would have hoped for, of course. Um, but then, how would you put it? Um, it was announced somewhere along the way that Donald Trump would present the trophy, and he did present the trophy. And as he was walking out on the field, well, he and Infantino got rather booed. And then when Donald Trump presented the trophy to Spain, ole! That must have had him crapping himself. Given Javier Milei, his buddy, is president of Argentina, and given the Prime Minister of Spain, Mr. Pedro Sanchez, uh, basically told Trump to go run an ultra marathon off the world's shortest pier when Donald Trump wanted to use American installations in Spain in order to wage his war on Iran. And Spain said, no, yeah, no, you won't be doing that. Because you see, NATO is a defensive alliance for things in the North Atlantic region, and this is an offensive thing that you're doing in the Middle East. That's not our mandate. We won't be helping you with that. I'm sure Donald Trump would have much loved to present that trophy to Argentina, but he had to present it to Spain, the country in NATO that keeps on flipping him the finger. And then he has him on the trophy, and then he sort of like stands on the stage. Like anything after him handing them the trophy was also his moment. No, Boo Boo Kitty. You look pretty, you hand the trophy, and then you move along because it's not about you. Yeah, some Canadians on the right wing side losing their minds again because Mark Carney was there. What's Mark Carney doing at the FIFA final? He doesn't need to be there. We're not even playing. We're just one of the co-hosts, though, right? It'd be kind of interesting to be one of the 3 co-host nations, not the final match where you're handing out the trophy. There's nobody from your country there. Merely moaning and complaining and whining. for the sake of moaning and complaining and whining. They complained when he went to see the Qatar match. They complained when he went to see the Switzerland match. You already saw the Qatar match. Why do you need to be at the Switzerland match? Then they complained when he didn't go to the South Africa match because he chose to go to Toronto Pride instead. Even though the South Africa match was in Los Angeles. And then he goes to the final and they go, what the hell is he doing there? He has no business being there, even though we're a host country. It's just dumb. He talked to Donald Trump, clearly, while I was there. I'm assuming Donald Trump tried to do that thing, you need to clean up your smoke from those wildfires thing. And, well, Mark Carney told him, I'm sorry, we won't be doing that. We're already doing everything that we can. Maybe he even diplomatically found a way. Maybe you would like to send some help. Or maybe he would at least want to help us by not distracting us from fighting the wildfires with the stupidity things and maybe not trying to hobble our economy so that we'd have more money to fight those wildfires. Maybe that would be cool. But no, we will not be having any of that today. Thank you. So, Donald Trump. Oh, yeah, there's that whole aging Carol thing, too, where he has to pay her. He's got no more avenues. That was also embarrassing. So things are not going well for him. He's not getting the adulation that he expects and demands. So, and he's not getting the subservience that he expects and demands. So, wake up one day and boom, new 50% tariffs on a whole whack of stuff. Some of the things, I believe, if I am not mistaken, that were CUSMA exempt and that are not now. So, let's look at a couple of things here. According to Peter Zamanich and Chris Rands of CBC, at the World Cup stuff, Trump tells Carney to take action on wildfire smoke during the World Cup chat. U.S. President Donald Trump personally told Prime Minister Carney to stop poisoning American air and take action to put out the wildfires burning across the country. Trump said he raised the issue of wildfire management with Carney when the two leaders appeared together to watch the World Cup final between Argentina and Spain in East Rutherford, New Jersey on Sunday. I told him, you got to stop these fires from coming in and, poisoning our air. Our air has been poisoned, Trump said at Joint Base Andrews after the game. The U.S. president said he has a good relationship with Carney before reiterating his threat to impose financial penalties on his northern neighbor for the wildfires' impact on U.S. air quality. Quote, if we can help them, we'll help them. What the F are you waiting for? But maybe they should pay some damages or something, or we should do some tariffs, but it was terrible, Trump said. You had businesses closing, in particular Michigan. Carney said Monday he had, quote, made very clear to Trump that Canada was doing its utmost to control the wildfires. During recent conversations with the U.S. president, Carney told CBC News that he had conveyed the size of the problem, including, quote, the scale of the forest that Canada is blessed with, 8 times the size of Texas, and the fact that we have effectively drought conditions that have extended from the equivalent of Texas all the way to Minnesota, to put it in American terms. Carney also said he had highlighted Canada's investment in firefighting, $12 billion in recent years, but fundamentally more than 5,000 brave women and men firefighters on those front lines. And as soon as Mark Carney got to 8 times the size of Texas, Donald Trump's eyes glazed over and he wasn't paying attention anymore. The Prime Minister also said he underscored Canada's contributions during American disasters. Managing the situation was a complex issue, Carney acknowledged. It's one we're managing and will continue to do that. Last week, cities in Michigan shut down beaches, splash pads, the Red Oaks Water Park, and even indoor pools because of the toxic smoke that blanketed Michigan and other northern U.S. states. The Detroit Free Press reported that dozens of workers at Ford, Michigan's assembly plant were taken to hospital after inhaling wildfire smoke inside non-air-conditioned plants. Trump first threatened to make Canada pay for the cost of U.S. quality in a Friday social media post when he joined some Republican House representatives' broad criticism of Canada's forest management practices, calling them willful negligence. Quote, we are holding Canada responsible for the fact they are not properly maintaining their forests and brush therein, and the United States is being unnecessarily invaded by filthy, polluted, and unhealthy air, the president wrote in a social media post on Friday. Quote, this is willful negligence and becoming a yearly occurrence, costing the United States billions of dollars, which cost of this pollution must be of necessity be added to the tariffs Canada is currently paying. these 50% tariffs are not for the smoke, by the way. These are a whole other set of 50% tariffs. Because I'm guessing once he wanted to sanction people or tariff people for smoke, he probably got laughed at summarily all around the world and his ego got bruised again. Canadians, quote, prefer to focus on helping one another, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources Tim Hodgson said during a media conference in Prince George, BC on Monday, referring to past assistance Canada has provided to fighting wildfires in the United States. Quote, we want to focus on being good neighbors and good allies. The federal government is doing what we can do to combat wildfires, he said, outlining measures to train new firefighters, procure more water bombers, support the provinces in delivering emergency services, and develop new firefighting technologies. Quote, extreme weather is a global challenge, and we have to recognize that we're doing our part by trying to be a clean and conventional energy superpower, he said. The world will be better off if we all work together as opposed to pointing fingers at one another. And probably, I'm just going to say, saying that we're doing everything, we're doing our part by trying to be a clean and conventional energy superpower as we are preparing to build more pipelines. Might not go over well with certain demographics. Just saying. He might have been better to say, we're trying to do that by electrifying our, by increasing our electrification instead of something. That probably wasn't a good moment to mentioning becoming a superpower that includes conventional energy. During a wildfire briefing in Toronto on Monday, Ontario Premier Doug Ford described Trump's comments as disappointing, to say the least. Doug Ford was also tanking the polls and being handed a great opportunity to put on that Captain Canada cape again. Because when things go bad for Doug Ford, one of the things he does is does that stand up to Trump thing. That's all folksy and people seem to love. Don't know if it will work with it. Still work for him now, considering that some of this stuff that people are tired of him is baked in. But gosh golly darn, it's worked for him before, and gosh gee, he's going to try it again, folks. Quote, with all the assets the U.S. has, he's sitting there complaining, Ford said, why don't you send up some water bombers? Why don't you start helping us? Like we would help you in a heartbeat. You should support your neighbors. That's my message to the president. On Friday, Ford reminded the U.S. president and other Republican legislators it was time to repay the efforts Canada undertook to restore electricity in the U.S. after Hurricane Helene in 2024 and the California wildfires last year. Quote, if there's some politicians out there chirping away, well, maybe what you should do rather than complain is send support, send help, because we have done the exact same thing for our American friends. That's what you're supposed to do, Ford said. The premier said he thinks Americans are good neighbors, but they need to start acting that way. It was also on CNN and really making the point that he has no problem with Americans. He loves Americans, but he is having a couple of issues with this administration. Last week, as I mentioned, Ohio Republican Senator Bernie Moreno promised to introduce new legislation to sanction Canada for what his officials called, quote, the wildfire pollution emergency. The text of that bill, the Canada Fire Act, posted on Moreno's website, gives Trump the power to declare if smoke originating from Canada over the last 12 months found its way into the United States. If so, the bill, which has yet to be introduced in the Senate, sets out stiff financial penalties for any Canadian official, from the Prime Minister to lower-level officials involved in wildfire management. Those penalties include halting loans to entities owned or controlled by the Canadian government, stopping any imports to the U.S. of anything produced by a Canadian government-owned entity, and banning any officials from entering the U.S. if they have a hand in the wildfire response. As an interim measure, the legislation asks U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio to consider kicking out Canada's ambassador, chef de mission, and more than a dozen other officials right down to the embassy spokesperson. Again, as an interim measure, kicking out our ambassador. After what theirs has done here. Like I said, zero self-awareness. Zero self-awareness. And again, all of this for domestic consumption. Because Trump is looking very, very weak. So this is what he needs now to look strong. Can run with this one. Because when things are going wrong, one of the number one ways out of it is to create an alternative narrative. We're his alternative narrative. It's just how it is with these people. So um, we have the threat of the 50% tariffs that came along yesterday. And let's see what there is in there. Let's go to the Globe and Mail. And this is from a trio of journalists. Well, it was from a trio of journalists. What happened? I'm just seeing Adam Morrow here. Might have been an updated because I have Adam Morrow, Nathaniel Vander Klipp, and Mark Rendell. So Adrian Morrow being the U.S. correspondent, Nathan Vander Klippe being the international correspondent, and Mark Rendell being the economics reporter. And they're based in Washington, Vancouver, and Toronto, respectively. U.S. President Donald Trump is escalating his trade war against Canada, imposing a 50% tariff on a range of goods to hit back at Ottawa for retaliating against Mr. Trump's previous tariffs. Okay. In 3 proclamations signed on Monday, Mr. Trump invoked Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930. So this is another new tariff thing that he had his people dig up and that he's testing to see whether he can use. A lot of people are suggesting that this will probably be challenged and it will fail as well. But we'll see. But, by the time that happens, of course, you can have a full year go by and a lot of damage done. In 3 proclamations signed Monday, Mr. Trump invoked Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930 to impose tariffs on wine, hockey sticks, cement, and a wide variety of other goods. The tariffs take effect on August 19th and will not include an exemption for goods trading under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. So he's given himself 30 days from that announcement to find a reason to taco on this, if he does. President Trump is offsetting the burden and disadvantage of U.S. commerce from Canada's discriminatory treatment of U.S. commerce and is leveling the playing field for crucial American exports, an announcement from the White House said. The tariffs will not apply to oil, gas, potash, fish, or critical minerals, so they've just showed us on the doll where it would hurt them if we punch them back. By, let's say, sort of like, you need oil, gas, potash, fish, or critical minerals. Well, for you, special price. Just saying. Or, oh, you need that oil, gas, you want to buy the oil, gas, potash, fish, and critical minerals that you claimed you did not need. I'm sorry, we just happen to be all out of that right now. I know, it's such a shame. Had you arrived just 5 minutes before, we had some on the shelf there, but we're just all out. Sorry. So while they're attacking us, they're telling us, or it is, that they don't want us to hit back. Mr. Trump last year imposed heavy tariffs on steel, aluminum, and autos, which disproportionately hit Canada and Mexico because let's try that again. Mr. Trump last year imposed hefty tariffs on steel, aluminum, and autos, which disproportionately hit Canada and Mexico because of the 3 North American countries' integrated economies. Canada and Mexico have also been the subject to other tariffs on goods traded outside the USMCA. Unlike most countries, Canada has retaliated against Mr. Trump's tariffs. Of particular irritation to the Trump administration have been the provinces, including Ontario, which removed U.S. liquor from store shelves. All but 2 Canadian provinces and territories have halted the purchase, distribution, or retailing of U.S. alcoholic beverages, the statement said. Yeah, and why do you think that happened? We didn't just wake up one day and said, we're not going to do that anymore. What happened? What did you do? What might have you done that could have caused Canada to wake up one day? Someone decide that. That doesn't factor into the equation here. History starts the millisecond after they did that. In the White House statement, the Trump administration also complained that Canadian imports of U.S. autos has decreased since Canada retaliated against the U.S. for imposing auto tariffs. Yes. What did you think would happen? Mr. Trump's latest salvo also comes days after he complained about smoke from Canadian forest fires wafting into the U.S., which he said he raised with Prime Minister Mark Carney at Sunday's World Cup final in New Jersey. Mr. Carney tried last year to negotiate down Mr. Trump's tariffs, but Mr. Trump abruptly ended talks in October after Ontario aired an anti-tariff ad in the United. My God, I'm having trouble today. Mr. Carney tried last year to negotiate down Mr. Trump's tariffs, but Mr. Trump abruptly ended talks in October after Ontario aired an anti tariff ad in the US. The two sides have begun talking again this spring, but there have been few signs of progress. Earlier this month, the US opted not to renew the USMCA, triggering a period of annual reviews set to last a decade. The US has started talks with Mexico to review the deal, but has so far not negotiated with Canada. So that's sort of the broad outline of what has happened. Uh, see if we can get a little something here from the Associated Press, which would probably be more from the American perspective here. And let's see if there's any additional information in this that could be of use to us. Says here, the move could unleash a new wave of economic chaos with risks of higher inflation and further fraying of relations between two nations that had been closely woven together before Trump's return to the White House. The administration official previewing the action said that Canada was one of the only nations other than China that retaliated against Trump's previous tariffs and must be held accountable. You dared stand up for yourself, now you must pay. The officials insisted on anonymity on a call with reporters to preview the president's actions and said that Trump signed 3 proclamations to launch the tariffs under Section 338 of the 1930 Trade Act. Several Democratic lawmakers last year proposed repealing the section because they said Trump could use it to destabilize the economy. The new 50% tariffs would exclude energy products, potash, fish, and critical minerals, but they would include goods that had previously been protected from import taxes by the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA. So as we are going in to negotiate this, and as we've already started negotiating trilaterally, they've just said, yeah, while we're negotiating, we're imposing 50% tariffs on these things that were previously excluded. Again, how do you negotiate with people like that? Again, they're making it clear their only deal on offer is a shitty deal, so why would we sign it? The White House said in a fact sheet that the tariffs would go into effect in 30 days, meaning there is time for negotiations, as Trump has not always followed through on his announced tax hikes on imports. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said in a statement that his government believes in the benefits of free and fair trade. Having signed more than 20 new economic and security partnerships, he said Canada is prepared to negotiate with the Trump administration. Quote, this trade dispute has raised costs for families, particularly in the U.S., Carney said. Canada stands ready to engage intensively to address outstanding issues with the U.S. to the mutual benefit of our citizens. Still, the tariffs could escalate into a wider trade war as Canada seeks to defend its economy. Ontario Premier Doug Ford saw a possible showdown ahead. Quote, if these tariffs proceed, Canada should respond tariff for tariff, dollar for dollar, Ford posted on social media. So Doug Ford rushing in to do the bad cop thing, which again allows Mark Carney to go to the president and say, listen, dude, my hands are tied. Look at my premiers are making me do this. Candice Lang, CEO of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, said the Trump administration's moves were, quote, regrettable, but the two countries need to use the 30-day window before the tariffs start to make meaningful progress in advancing formal talks. Chris Swanger, CEO of the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, also called for a deal. We encourage policymakers on both sides of the border to pursue a negotiated solution that restores market access for U.S. spirits and avoids further harm to the U.S. hospitality sector. But the use of a Great Depression-era law to impose the tariffs brought on some of the risks, as those tariffs could be applied to other U.S. trading partners, not just Canada, and inject, quote, massive uncertainty into the global economy, said Scott Lincecum, Vice President of General Economics at the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank. We crossed the Rubicon, Lincecum said. The invocation of 338 is the nuclear option for Trump tariffs. The new tariffs carry serious political and economic risks for Trump ahead of this November midterm elections for control of Congress. His, quote, Liberation Day tariffs last year in April provoked a financial market meltdown over concerns about inflation and a recession, prompting him to walk back the rates for a period of negotiation. And that might happen again here, kids and cubs, because as I keep on saying, we have one of our aces that we have up our sleeve as a country is that Trump doesn't seem to particularly understand economics. Neither does his administration. And we have a 2-time central banker who basically lives, breathes, eats, and sleeps the bond market. And of course, as former Bank of Canada, with the respect he has around the world, also has a certain amount of convening power. One particularly, two well-placed phone calls, one to the Prime Minister of Japan, one to the Chancellor of Germany, and a little coordinated action on selling U.S. debt and bonds could have an impact on Treasury yields that could get him to change his mind. These are quiet little things that happen in the background, but I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens because, once again, kits and cubs, I'm going to show you some data. I often go back to here. It's the U.S. 10-year and 30-year bond rates. And if we are looking here, this is the 10-year. And when I brought you that story a little while ago about people getting worried that the United States might be entering the danger zone, on around that time, the peak that was achieved, which was May 19th, was a opening at 4.6%, reached a high of 4.69% at some point in the day, and ended up closing at 4.66. We currently are at 4.616 on the 10-year bond. We're at 5/100ths of a basis point where we were at that time. And the highest it's been in the last little bit, right around end of COVID, where we had a 4.92 at one point. And again here in early January, 4.77. So around the fourth highest it has been since at least, well, let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Right about here. Since about 2007. That's not good, particularly with the crushing U.S. debt and how quickly that is growing. Now, the other one we can look at here is the 30-year. Sorry, let me get that for you because I just showed you the 10-year. So let's give you the 30 here. And if you look here, same thing, May 19th, the same date where things got very intense. It opened at 5.13% and closed at 5.18%, which was the daily high. 5.18. It right now sits at 5.12. So let's say 5.129. So let's say 5.13. So again, about 5/100ths of a basis point. And that too, if we look again, is high since about 2002, 2003. And that's before any phone calls have been placed. By relitigating the war on Iran. And now doing this. There is going to come a time where the markets are going to react in such a way that is going to send the fear of God into them at some point. Now, the stock markets, interestingly enough, again, as we keep on mentioning, because they are three AI companies in a trench coat, are doing really well today. The Dow Jones so far right now is up to 322. And even in Canada, despite this big threat, the TSX is up 261 points at the moment. So the stock market is yawning, but the bond markets are not. And the bond market is way larger than the stock market. So if you guys are wondering about the odds that Trump will taco himself on this in the next 30 days, follow the 5, 10, and 30-year bond yield curves over the next 30 days and see where they go. And if they keep climbing, and particularly right now we're at the around the 5.1s, but if the 30-year one happens to be closing in on the 5.5 region, people are going to start panicking very, 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 very much. And some of these might be walked back. Wow. Okay. Other things that we are hearing with regard to this, one of the things is that Avi Lewis even had, I shouldn't say Avi Lewis even, because that makes it sound like he normally wouldn't. Let me put it. Let me try that without it accidentally trying to sound condescending. Avi Lewis also had an appearance on CNN. So Doug Ford on CNN, Avi Lewis on CNN, the Prime Minister, of course, being asked about these types of things because, of course, he is the Prime Minister. Interestingly enough, Pierre Poilièvre doesn't seem to be much anywhere on this thing. I think that the Avi Lewis thing, just to be absolutely clear here, was more about the forest fires specifically than the 50% new tariffs there. But of course, they were talking about, I think, because he was suggesting additional tariffs because of this. I believe this answer, if I'm not mistaken, from Avi Lewis, kind of addresses it in some way, right? But it was when's the last time you heard about the leader of the NDP, having a status such that they would be asked on CNN?
But I think it's important to get back to basics.
Oops. My speed is too fast, so let me fix that there. Here we go.
But I think it's important to get back to the basics because apparently we have to remind everyone of these facts. Wildfires are getting more and more devastating because they're being turbocharged by global warming. Global warming is being caused primarily by the burning of fossil fuels. If carbon dioxide was visible like smoke, you'd see the biggest single cloud in history that's drifted out of the United States. And that's the responsibility of big oil, headquartered in the United States and elsewhere. According to the Carbon Majors database, Exxon and Chevron are both in the top 5 greenhouse gas emitters of all time. Trump doesn't talk about that. After all, the fossil fuel industry contributed almost $100 million to his reelection campaign, $500 million spent by big oil in the last election cycle alone. If President Trump wants compensation for the harms that these fires are causing, how about an excess profit tax on big oil that made $30 million an hour in excess profits in the first month of the illegal war on Iran? I would like to express my condolences to the American people today. Your president is like an old man shaking his fist and screaming up at smoke from a fire that he is responsible for lighting or at least pouring gasoline onto.
And there you have it. These things are all intertwined and interrelated here, because everything is an opportunity for another tariff or a tax, right? But Pierre Poilièvre, really nowhere on that. In fact, producing a video somewhere along the way that was like, well, it's a beautiful day where I am, so the world is not coming to an end. Yes, it's not smoky where I am, so the wildfire smoke thing is not an issue. But nothing for nothing from him. If you're going to his Twitter feed, nothing about him standing up for Canada on that issue against what the United States is saying. With regard to the tariffs, there is a statement because conservatives love to do that, right? They come out with a statement. Read my statement. But how involved are they? So, the official conservative position, at least on a statement, is Shuvali Majumdar, Conservative Shadow Minister for Canada-US Relations, Eric Duncan, Conservative Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs, Stéphanie Kuzi, Conservative Shadow Minister for International Trade, and Pierre Poilièvre, Conservative Quebec Lieutenant, released the following statement. You'll notice that the leader of the opposition's name is not on the statement. Quote, President Trump's latest tariffs are another unacceptable and unjustified attack on Canadian workers and our businesses. Canadians are not a punching bag. Their anxieties about their future have only been deepened. These tariffs must be withdrawn immediately. 14 months ago, Prime Minister Mark Carney described the breakdown in our relationship with the United States as the worst economic crisis since the Second World War. He was right. Canada is in a major crisis, and despite making promises to Canadians to secure a deal, the Liberals are failing to meet the moment with the urgency it deserves. Liberals have failed to explain anything to Canadians, obscuring transparency and relying on ad hominem attacks on the opposition. President Trump is wrong to target Canadian workers and must reverse these tariffs immediately. And Mark Carney was wrong to surrender Canada's leverage for over a year and a half without actually working to secure the deal he promised. Conservatives have no way of knowing whether that happened. They're not in the room. This is what they need to be true. This is literally wish casting here. This is what they wish is happening so that this can stand. They don't know. Quote, Conservatives will fight for our workers, our businesses, and for a strong, sovereign, and united Canada as we would have done over a year and a half ago. And yet you haven't yet started. So that's all we have for the Conservatives. And then I guess Pierre Poilièvre, maybe he didn't want to be included on that one, but he decided to then put out his own. The statement from Majumdar and everyone came on the 20th. Pierre Poilièvre put his out today. If I'm looking here, 12 minutes ago. Actually, let's get a more updated timestamp here, just to be sure. 15 minutes ago. Finally got around to. Today, the Honourable Pierre Poilièvre, leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition and the Conservative Party of Canada, released the following statement after President Trump announced new tariffs on Canada. Quote, the President's threat yesterday of new and additional tariffs. Sorry, let's do that the right way. The President's threat yesterday of new and additional tariffs on Canada is unjustified and wrong, especially considering that Mexico is not facing these new tariffs. They will raise prices on Americans and hurt Canadian workers. Canadians deserve better treatment from our neighbors. Conservatives call on the President to reverse these threats, remove tariffs, and restore free trade. Doing so will boost incomes and lower costs for consumers. Yes, because all the other previous times that you called on him to reverse the threats, remove the tariffs, and restore the free trade, he really got on that. He just got right on that. Quote, we need a plan to fight these new tariffs before they take effect on August 19, 2026. All parties must work together to prevent the tariffs from happening. Conservatives are here to help and fight for Canada. Really? How? When? Where? Again, when will you start? Quote, that is why conservatives are calling for the International Trade Committee to convene to hear the government's plan to prevent these new tariffs from taking effect and to fight for tariff-free trade. We are also seeking a meeting of the Government Operations Committee on the recent deal to share toll revenues on the Gordie Howe Bridge. Our mission is to work together for Canadian workers and tariff-free trade. Canada must be strong at home, so we have unbreakable leverage abroad. Work together. Work together. Huh. Conservatives are here to help fight for Canada. We called for the International Trade Committee to convene to hear the government's plan to prevent these new tariffs from taking effect. We're going to call the committee together so we can sit there and hear what the government's plan is. That's how we're here to help. We're also seeking a meeting of the Government Operations Committee on the recent deal to share toll revenue on the Gordie Howe Bridge. And of course, the purpose of that meeting to look at sharing toll revenue on the Gordie Howe Bridge is, again, probably not to see how we can get the Americans to decide to suddenly not accept the tolls, right? Right? That's what we'll be looking for at that meeting, right, Conservatives? Because we're working together. That means unblocking pipelines, LNG plants, port expansions, and other privately funded infrastructure to reach world markets. It means unblocking our resources and committing to a strategic and blah, 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 all the stuff he normally says. We need a plan from the government now that will get results for Canadian workers. We have the plan. We voted on it. The fact that you will not recognize is that there is a plan that's being followed and it's in place doesn't mean that there isn't one, sir. Just saying. So yes, calling a meeting to hear what the government's plan is, saying that we need a plan to deal with it, and seeking another meeting of another committee so that they can look into sharing the toll revenues on the Gordie Howe Bridge, probably to find another baseball bat with which they can bash the government head with it, not to actually do anything that could make it such that the American administration would actually change its mind on what it is that what it is that they are doing. Just saying. The Conservatives have not proven to be particularly helpful on this file. Again, I will remind everyone that when Justin Trudeau was still the Prime Minister, one day he called all the leaders of all the opposition parties and asked them to work their contacts. Conservatives never got around to that. And then we found out later when Pierre Poilièvre took his trip to the United States after Jamil Jawani took his own. When Pierre Poilièvre took his trip to the United States to try to prove to Canada, hey, Canada, I can Carney too. And then we found out from Mickey Jurich of Politico that, in the United States, the Republicans think of Pierre Poilièvre as the apple-crunching guy who lost. And that Pierre's campaign was so insular that not only did he think he could win without reaching out to the Doug Ford or Tim Houston Conservatives, but he didn't actually build any network whatsoever in the United States. He didn't meet with any high-level officials because he doesn't really know any. And that's where the Jamil Jawani thing is really, really bad for Pierre and makes him look really, really weak when he doesn't control that particular member of his caucus. Won't kick him out of caucus. Jamil Jawani, who, as Corey Tonight, I think it is, or Scott Reed, or someone like that, and we have as well, have accurately pointed out, has had a problem with every single employer he has ever had. Sign number 246.7 that you might not be a team player. This guy has access to JD Vance because he's the bestie from his college days. Jamil Jawani actually has some networks that he could plug into, and Pierre doesn't after 22 years. Just never thought of building that. Didn't think he would need it. But yeah, call a meeting. We want to hear your plan. We're going to stand and fight for Canada by sitting down and listening to your plan. And then probably poo-pooing all over it. We like to help. These people, I swear. Oh, man. Let's see. What else do we have here with regard to this? So yeah, like I said, a long list, very, very long list of products. See if I can find it here. According to Al Jazeera here, there's a little bit here. Let's take what goods are affected. A slapping of import taxes on goods ranging from wine to cement and ice hockey gear. The new tariffs would also apply to dairy products, swimming pools, furniture, fishing rods, seeds, clothing, and wigs, among other things. Just insane. So, I mean, a lot of these are not necessarily right big industries, but if your industry is singled out in this one, this probably affects them immensely. Um, Of course, this is Donald Trump also trying to rebuild his tariff wall after many of his tariffs were struck down by the Supreme Court earlier this year. So that's why he's using this untested legal provision, seeing if it works here, and if it does, then he can use it further around the world to rebuild that wall that the Supreme Court partially tore down. Fortunately, as this happens, and as you know, this is all part of the trade negotiations. We had Jameson Greer, the U.S. trade representative, telling us, basically putting it out there that whenever we did something that would create the impression that we did cave on something, like the digital service tax, for example, or not going forward with the CRTC recommendation, to impose fees that would help fund our industries and creation of some Canadian content. When those things happened, that we get no credit for that because we were just reversing bad decisions that never should have been made in the first place. Again, probably from U.S. consumption, but that's probably reflective of the U.S. attitude. We have Bob Ray, who states here, the shakedown, part 2284, you can count on the Trump administration to slap on illegal tariffs in the middle of a negotiation. He does it to steel and aluminium, illegal because there's no security crisis. Lumber, illegal because there's no federal or provincial subsidy. These latest measures are not in relation to retaliation for anything. They are bullying, pure and simple. The McCarthy-Roy Cohn playbook on us one more time. I don't, again, don't know how you can see it any other way. It also took aim at the fact that most Canadian provinces have stopped buying U.S. alcohol, boycotting the products over Trump's tariffs, threats, and repeated calls for annexation of Canada's America's 51st state. Canada has taken U.S. alcohol products off Canadian shelves, given better market access to dairy products from the European Union, and has put a cap on U.S. vehicle exports to Canada from companies reshoring to the United States, U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer charged in a statement. The tariff announcement aims, quote, to hold Canada accountable for its retaliation and discrimination. And again, with zero acknowledgement that the discrimination came from the United States initially and sort of the first punch. Those very, very special fentanyl tariffs that applied pretty much to only us, way before those Liberation Day tariffs came around. Well, what was that about? We didn't take aim at Canada. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. You did that, we responded. The things that you are now claiming here, that we are discriminating. We didn't discriminate against your products first. You discriminated against ours first. You didn't want us to retaliate, which is giving a lot of credence to what Vashi Kapelos asked Ambassador Doucheface. It seems like you're upset that when you punched us, we did not decide to stay down. So yeah, this is going to be ugly, and there's going to be a whole lot more pressure tactics. But yeah, they're going to keep coming at us. Tariffs. I'm looking at the list. It's ridiculous. There's 7 pages worth of items on this list. Crazy. Articles of iron and steel that would be used in table, kitchen, or other household articles or parts thereof. Even like for iron or steel wool, pot scourers, polishing pads, sanitary ware and parts thereof of iron, steel. So examples there: sinks, wash basins, stampings, my God, grinding balls, similar articles for mills. Just like I said, it's some of these things are very technical. Aluminum bars, rods, and profiles, aluminum wire, and all used in different things. Aluminum tube, aluminum structures that could be used in doors, windows, and their frames. Stranded wire cables, plated bands. Motor cars and other motor vehicles principally designed for the transport of persons, including station wagons and racing cars. Antiques that are older than 100 years, but not as old as 250 years. Just a random list. Now I'm going to guess that these are things that I'm not sure if, because given the various abilities to produce aluminium and steel in our countries, I'm not sure if these are necessarily a list of products that the United States feels it could provide for itself and would not hurt them. Normally, if we would retaliate with similar ones, we would choose products that come in from the United States for which we have fully acceptable equivalents here or substitutes that Canadians can choose instead. That's usually the first way to go here. I see Tavi G is giving a shout out to a friend of the pod here, Olga Nestorova, for her writing. So take a look at that maybe as well and see if there is anything from her, because yeah, she always has a good opinion here with that type of stuff. I don't see specifically here. There we go. The supply chains Washington cannot tariff away. The United States produces more oil and gas than any other country. It still depends on Canadian energy, minerals, and infrastructure, and its slate of tariffs reveal where economic coercion meets physical reality. The United States is simultaneously pursuing 2 objectives that are becoming increasingly difficult to reconcile. Washington wants defense equipment, critical minerals, and essential components to come from the United States or trusted allies rather than potentially hostile suppliers. A new executive order directs defense contractors to map their supply chains down to the raw material level, identify foreign vulnerabilities, and qualify alternative sources. At almost the same moment, President Donald Trump announced a 50% tariff on approximately $20 billion in selected Canadian goods, including products that had qualified for duty-free treatment under the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Canada is not merely another trading partner in this equation, it's part of the North American defense industrial base, the United States' largest source of imported crude oil and important supplier of natural gas, electricity, and critical minerals. The administration excluded energy, potash, fish, and critical minerals for the new 50% tariff. Those exceptions are not incidental details. They identify the points at which political pressure collides with physical dependence. Washington can tax Canadian furniture, wine, and hockey equipment. It cannot as easily replace the oil flowing into Midwestern refineries, the natural gas entering regional pipeline systems, the minerals required by defense manufacturers, or the electricity transmitted directly into New York City. So again, sort of laying out some of the things that we were stating. There is more to the article, but unfortunately, I cannot see the rest, so I have to stop there. But hopefully, I can find a way to obtain it from Olga, or hopefully we will have her on the show soon enough. And therefore, we will be able to talk about it. I'm just noticing here, kits and cubs, have I stopped moving? No, okay. I thought I was frozen for a second here, but no, everything's fine. All right. So Olga's newsletter this morning had parts about the tariffs in it. Yes. Wondering why I'm not receiving Olga's newsletter. Actually, I'm surprised to it. I guess that must have been. I probably need to go resubscribe in order to get that. But yeah, again, sort of you could sort of see the thesis there going that he is hobbled, and that the trade policies are going to, the different things that he wants to accomplish don't necessarily go together, and at some point he's probably going to have to sacrifice one, or at least realize that he can't get both. So thank you, Kit Saucy. Fantastic. Good. All clear so far. Let's hope that continues. So that's a little bit what's going on with this portion of it at the moment. We will find out more as the days go by, because there is, 30 days for him to tackle himself on this. But there was an interesting article in the Toronto Star about this, and this is Xavier Mesquita, staff reporter, says on Monday the White House announced its intention to impose new 50% tariffs on a wide range of Canadian goods. A statement from United States Trade Representative Jameson Greer's office said they would apply to roughly $20 billion in Canadian imports and come into effect in 30 days. The reaction was swift. A quote, grenade lobbed across the border, absurd, or like an arsonist, here's how the leaders have reacted. In a statement issued late Monday, Carney backed Canada's handling of the trade spat thus far. And he issued the following statement. Today, the United States administration announced its intention to impose a new 50% tariff on a significant number of Canadian goods. This is the latest in a series of unilateral U.S. trade actions that began with the United States imposing a series of tariffs in direct violation of the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement, the free trade agreement between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. They include tariff on the Canadian auto sector in violation of CUSMA. Canada, as its right, has merely matched those measures. More broadly, in response to these measures and threats to Canadian sovereignty, provinces, territories, and Canadians from coast to coast to coast have stood together, taking the necessary actions to support our economy and defend our workers, farmers, businesses, and families. Recognizing that the U.S. has been transforming all of its trade relationships, including those covered under CUSMA, over the past 18 months, Canada has made a series of detailed and comprehensive proposals to resolve this dispute and to modernize CUSMA. We stand ready to intensify those discussions in the coming weeks. Canada believes in the benefits of free and fair trade, as evidenced by our new government signing more than 20 new economic and security partnerships. This trade dispute has raised costs for families, particularly in the U.S. Canada stands ready to engage intensively to address outstanding issues with the U.S. to the mutual benefit of our citizens. In all circumstances, Canada will work relentlessly and take any measures necessary to build our strength at home and to support Canadian workers, farmers, businesses, and families. So that was the Prime Minister's statement on that. It says here, Opposition leader Pierre Poilièvre released a statement on Tuesday morning calling on Trump to reverse the threat in tariffs, and that's what I read to you not too long ago. And another statement released by multiple senior Conservative Party figures and reposted by Poilièvre, the new measures were described as another unacceptable and unjustified attack on Canadian workers and businesses. That was the statement that was signed by the 4 or 5 people from the CPC that I mentioned before. Meanwhile, NDP leader Avi Lewis described the announcement as, quote, the latest economic grenade lobbed across the border by an out-of-control president who has lost all touch with reality. This is a direct attack on Canadian workers and industries, putting thousands of jobs at risk, and will drive up prices for American consumers, he said. Lewis added, we've had enough of being treated like Trump's tariff guinea pigs. Premier Doug Ford urged the Prime Minister to retaliate against the latest trade threat. Quote, I'll never stop fighting to protect Ontario. You should start, sir. If these tariffs proceed, Canada should respond tariff for tariff, dollar for dollar, Ford said in a social media post moments after the president's announcement. Speaking to reporters on Monday, BC Premier David Eby called the proposal very disappointing, or the proposed tariffs very disappointing. Quote, if you're picking fights with Canadians, you don't have a friend in the world, Eby said, adding, at this point, I just feel sorry for Americans, you know. I believe there was something else he had stated. I I had found it earlier. So something like not a snowball's chance in hell or something. Let's see if I can find it. There we go. Not a snowball, not a chance in hell. There's not a chance in hell that U.S. alcohol is going back on the shelf in British Columbia, Evie said Tuesday at a meeting of premiers in Charlottetown. The idea of the president that he can bully us into whatever he wishes is incorrect. So there you go. Again, the United States really wanting to pressure us on booze in particular here. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith warned the tariffs could backfire on both countries. Quote, these new tariffs announced today will hurt both Canadian and American businesses and workers. Tariffs are an economically destructive policy and have been proven time and time again to hurt the people of the countries that impose them. In Quebec, Premier Christine Fréchette called the threats unjustified and concerning, drawing a firm line around the province's supply management system. Quote, as for supply management, any weakening is non-negotiable. We will defend it without compromise, Fréchette wrote on X, adding that she would raise the issue with Carney at the Premier's meeting this week. This is the worst time to add a layer of instability to Quebec's economy when our businesses need predictability, she said. Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston tied the tariffs directly to wildfires burning in Canada, casting Trump's move as a betrayal at a moment of crisis. Hours after watching the World Cup final from a glassed-in suite with Carney on Sunday, Trump told reporters that while the pair had a good relationship, the fires needed to stop and threatened tariffs. As our province and country work together to fight wildfires, President Trump responds with more threats and punishing tariffs, Houston wrote. At this point, we should not be surprised. Real friends do not threaten you when you are in trouble. They step up and help. And in an accompanying video, Houston thanked, quote, our friends from Newfoundland in sharing resources to combat the fires, drawing a pointed contrast with Washington. Quote, that's what friends do when you're in trouble. They help. They don't threaten you. They don't laugh at you. They don't stand by and watch things burn. They don't tariff you. They act. They step up. They help. He added, despite the ignorant commentary coming from President Trump, please know that there is still some kindness south of the border. Whew. The announcement also drew sharp reaction from American officials outside the White House. Defending the move, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer accused Ottawa of continuing to retaliate against Washington, quote, unlike other partners and allies. Quote, Canada has taken U.S. alcohol products off Canadian shelves, given better market access to dairy products from the European Union, and has put a cap on U.S. vehicle exports to Canada from companies reshoring to the United States, Greer said in the statement. However, Democratic lawmakers were quick to condemn the decision. California Senator Adam Schiff warned the move would rebound on American industries reliant on Canadian markets. Quote, Trump's return to a trade war with Canada further imperils American businesses and industries like California wine that rely on Canadian markets. As Canada faces a serious natural disaster at home, this is the wrong message to send to our northern neighbor. New York Governor Kathy Hochul was blunter. Quote, only Donald Trump could see wildfire smoke and decide the answer is more tariffs. Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey drew the same connection, arguing that, quote, Trump putting a 50% tariff on Canada in response to the wildfire smoke is like an arsonist trying to collect on the insurance policy after the house burns down. Tariffs don't put out wildfires, firefighters do. If Canada is asking for our help, we should send it, he said. Washington Senator Patty Murray was blunt in her comments posted to the social media. Quote, yet another absurd and harmful escalation in Trump's idiotic trade war with our close friend and ally. Trump's tariffs continue to hurt Americans and Canadians alike. So, that is some of the stuff that is going on. Of course, you've been hearing in these comments about a meeting of the premiers that is happening, and in Charlottetown, if I am not mistaken. Says here, Canada's premiers are gathering in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, for a 3-day meeting that will culminate with Carney joining the discussion on Thursday. The premiers will also meet with Indigenous leaders later Tuesday. Key issues among the provinces have included efforts to cut down any remaining barriers to internal trade and advocating for big infrastructure projects that could bring investment and jobs into their regions. But there's also fresh economic uncertainty after Trump imposed the new tariffs, and several premiers said they were entering talks keen to strengthen Canada's position. Okay, interesting there. Let's see what we have here from CP, which is the Canadian Press, on the Premier's meeting. Let's see. Okay, it's not, yes, Canadian Press. Perfect. Huh, interesting. Just Trump running his mouth again here. Prime Minister Mark Carney will meet virtually with the country's premiers Tuesday afternoon after the U.S. announced increased tariffs on Canadian goods. PEI Premier Rob Lance said Tuesday morning at the Council of the Federation meeting in Charlottetown that the virtual meeting with the Prime Minister had been added to the agenda. Carney was originally scheduled to meet with the premiers and territorial leaders on Thursday before U.S. President Donald Trump signed orders to increase levies by 50% on some Canadian goods. Carney is still expected to attend later in the week. Senior White House officials said the tariffs to be applied within 30 days are in response to provincial bans on U.S. liquor, Canada's supply managed dairy system, and quotas on certain U.S. vehicles. The new tariffs will not apply to energy, potash, fish, or other goods already facing separate sector-specific tariffs. Several premiers said Tuesday that the federal government needs to increase its efforts to renew the Canada-U.S.-Mexico free trade deal. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe urged Dominic LeBlanc, the minister in charge of U.S.-Canada trade, and his teams to, quote, to camp out in Washington, D.C. until CUSMA is renewed. He said the U.S. and Canada need to drop the rhetoric and get to the negotiating table. Okay. Lance said the Council of the Federation meeting hadn't been derailed by Trump's new threats and the trade was already high on the agenda this week. Key issues among the provinces include efforts to cut down any remaining barriers to internal trade and advocating for big infrastructure projects that could bring investment and jobs to the region. Reached ahead of the meeting on the latest tariff threat, several premiers said they were entering talks keen to strengthen Canada's position. Ontario Premier Doug Ford's office said he will push counterparts to cut red tape and move quickly. Ontario Premier Doug Ford's office said he will push counterparts to cut red tape and move quicker to get big projects built to shield the nation's economy from global instability. Quote, Canada must move quickly to build the roads, transit, energy, mining, and critical infrastructure projects needed to strengthen our economy, create good-paying jobs, and reduce our reliance on other countries, Ford's office said in a statement. A spokesperson for Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said she'll continue efforts to eliminate any limits to cross-provincial trade, including restrictions on alcohol. Alberta will also continue to advocate for policies that remove federal barriers to trade and investment so that we can get major nation-building projects built, get more of our resources to market, and drive generational economic growth as a world-leading energy superpower, spokesperson Sam Blackett said. Laurie Turnbull, political science professor at Dalhousie University, said she doesn't expect any earth-shattering announcements, but she will be watching for any change in the tenor of provincial-federal relations, noting it has been largely collaborative so far. Quote, Carney's been there long enough now that get-to-know-you stage of the relationship is over, and I wouldn't be surprised if they pushed him a little harder this time, Turnbull said of the premiers. New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt hinted she may be looking to clinch an energy deal after the Carney government advanced a new West Coast oil pipeline with Alberta, signed a major clean energy and infrastructure deal with British Columbia, and backed a proposed oil pipeline from Alberta to Ontario. I'm optimistic that you'll see some more specifics on agreements in terms of energy partnerships as we advance those discussions with my colleagues, as well as with the Prime Minister, Holt said in an interview without revealing further details. Despite a revived effort for big national projects, Turnbull said premiers will inevitably go back to their old songbook and demand federal help with basic provincial responsibilities like healthcare and managing the affordability crisis. Before news of Trump's new tariff threat, the U.S. president was already top of mind for Manitoba Premier Bob Canoe, who stressed the need, quote, to ensure that the national unity against the Trump threat is maintained while making sure provinces have the resources for healthcare and education at the same time. Trump's levies on Canadian goods have continued to affect every Canadian province, including Ontario steel, fabrication in Alberta, and aluminium production and forestry industries in British Columbia, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada. While Ottawa has responded with reciprocal tariffs, emergency funds, and buy Canadian policies, premiers have called on Carney to prioritize a strong outcome on the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, known as CUSMA. Eby said that he would tell Carney that no trade deal with the U.S. is better than a bad one. Quote, it has been proven over time that Canada's approach has been the right one, which is to resist making a bad deal for the purposes of getting a deal done quickly, Eby said in an interview ahead of meeting his counterparts. While the premiers may have common struggles and goals, there are also divisions within the group of 13. Chief among them could be Smith's approach to separatism forces in our province. Quote, the separatism conversation continues in that province, and there are strong divisions between the premiers about how Premier Smith is handling that, BC's Eby said. Former New Brunswick Premier Sean Graham, who hosted a Council of the Federation meeting in 2007, says most of the real work is done at informal one-on-one chats after the big roundtable discussions. Quote, there was always the national agenda that you were trying to achieve, but it was the side meetings that I found most effective at hammering out issues that may have been stalled, he told the Canadian press. Premiers have also their own priorities to push. Ford's office says the Ontario Premier has a series of proposals to better protect police officers. During a provincial wildfire update on Monday, Ford said he also plans to discuss the need for national fire strategy at the Premier's meeting. We need the support from the federal government, he said. Canoe said he wants reforms to disaster financial relief and funding for the National Action Plan to end gender-based violence. And Yukon Premier Curry Dixon says he'll be working to ensure Northern perspectives and challenges remain part of those discussions. Graham said current economic pressures echo challenges during the global recession in 2009, and teamwork is crucial. Anytime you can bring premiers together to strengthen confederation, it's a good thing. When I said Trump was running his mouth again, basically saying things like, without us, there's no way they can survive. Okay. I love Canada. I love the people of Canada, said Trump from the Oval Office on Tuesday. They need us to survive. Without us, there's no way they can survive. That's his quote. And asked whether those new 50% tariffs are related to wildfire smoke drifting south of the border, Trump said, we're looking at that separately. So a 1-2 punch he's got for us. Planned, maybe. Wow. Speaking to reporters in Ottawa on Tuesday, Carney said he spoke with U.S. President this morning and that the two agreed to intensify negotiations in coming weeks. The Prime Minister categorized Trump's latest tariff threat, quote, as a series of trade actions against Canada in violation of our agreement, CUSMA, with the United States and Mexico. He also reiterated that Canada's primary goal is to focus on what we can control, building strength here at home, supporting each other, buying Canadian, and diversifying partnerships abroad. Couple of quotes, I think, from the Prime Minister from earlier this morning. So these are things I haven't had a chance to see yet, but this has been brought to us by Scott Robertson here. We have 4 segments with Prime Minister Mark Carney. So I'm going to bring these to you here in successive order, and we will see together what it is that the Prime Minister said about these things.
Throughout this time, we have made a series of comprehensive and detailed proposals about how to modernize CUSMA, recognizing the transition that the U.S. is underway in the international and all its trading relationships, including with Canada and Mexico. I spoke with President Trump earlier this morning. We agreed to intensify negotiations in the coming weeks, and the team and myself look forward to doing that. As always, Canadians, governments, business, labor will stand together to build Canada strong and to have a trading relationship with our North American partners that benefits everyone.
All right, so that's some basic stuff here. Then he continues here talking about the 338 tariffs specifically. So let's see what the Prime Minister had to say about that. I am having trouble today. There we go.
Look, we have a situation where these, the American tariffs, the 338.
Okay, again, not sure why it is that the screen keeps on turning, the volume keeps on turning itself off, but let's try that one more time.
Look, we have a situation where these, the American tariffs, the 338 tariffs, will come into effect in 29 days. And we will look at all options in terms of how we would respond if they do come into effect. That's part of what we'll be discussing with premiers. Also, in parallel, as I just said, that I'd spoken with the President. We agreed to intensify discussions. We'll begin that right away. And this is part of the negotiation. So the first objective is to get a comprehensive agreement that benefits, obviously, both countries, that's consistent with CUSMA, CUSMA as it is and CUSMA as it will be, and we'll work towards that. But in parallel, when I say we will do whatever it takes and keep all options, obviously, it's a comprehensive point.
All right. So that is there from the Prime Minister as well. Nothing in these things that particularly stand out. These are some boilerplate statements that we are seeing. Let's see if there is anything a little more substantive or meaty in the final 2 interventions here.
Were you caught off guard? You recently made concessions in regards to the Gordie Howe Bridge. You rolled back the Digital Services Tax, the Online Streaming Act. Are you going to make more concessions in order to get the Americans to the table?
We're at the table. We'll be having those more intense discussions. And, what the issue has been for us has been a comprehensive agreement. We understand the U.S. approach to strategic sectors, what they call strategic sectors. They are strategic sectors, but under their definition, 232 definitions, that's aluminum, that's forest products, that's steel, that's automobiles, pharmaceuticals, copper, others. But those first four being the most important for the Canadian economy. And that we don't want a partial agreement. We want something that addresses those sectors as well, so that there's a viable approach going forward. In our view, and the view of Madame Scheinbaum and the Mexican authorities, there are solutions that evolve CUSMA so that those sectors are globally competitive to the benefit of workers. Of course, we're working for workers in Canada first and foremost, but also workers across the other two economies.
All right. And then the final quote from the Prime Minister on this that was taken from his press conference today, or not press conference, but Scrum availability today.
Should the provinces put booze back on the shelves? Will that help with these negotiations?
It's part of a broader... The provinces individually took those decisions in response to a series of tariffs that were put in place, and also threats to our sovereignty. Those measures have been supported by provincial citizens, and they're supported, and it's indicative in terms of other consumption habits, if I can put it that way, of Canadians, where Canadians have traveled.
Okay, and once again, the volume cut out. I do not know what the problem is with this today. I am so sorry, kids and cubs. One last time.
Help with these negotiations?
It's part of a broader...
This is not working. Okay, one last time.
Should the provinces put booze back on the shelves? Will that help with these?
Okay, I do not know what's happening here. Why the volume keeps cutting up. The mute just keeps on turning itself on. One last time.
Should the provinces put booze back on the shelves? Will that help with these negotiations?
It's part of a broader... The provinces individually took those decisions in response to a series of tariffs that were put in place, and also threats to our sovereignty. Those measures have been supported by provincial citizens, and they're supported, and it's indicative in terms of other consumption habits, if I can put it that way, of Canadians, where Canadians have traveled. Other things that are on the shelves but aren't being purchased. The decision to change that, first and foremost, will be taken by the provinces themselves, each individually, and should only be taken, in my judgment, as part of an overall agreement, and that's what we'll work to accomplish.
Should the provinces put booze back?
All right, kids and cubs. That's what we got. So the Prime Minister. So nothing really earth-shattering here in these response and basic boilerplate answers to the questions that are being asked. We also have a couple of stories for you today, again, because we have been following the slow and steady drip, drip, drip of the downfall of the Canadian Conservative movement at the time, or particularly, more specifically, the fortunes of Pierre Poilièvre. And again, there are no lack of pieces being written, and if you've watched the last two hurly-burlies or Curse of Politics that have Corey Tonight on them, ouch, is all I'm going to say. Ouch. There are more things here. I believe this one is from the Globe and Mail's Gary Mason. here, and I'm just trying to see if did I read this one the other day? Just want to check here. Yeah. Let's see here. No, this is a different one. Okay, because a lot of the themes are similar, right? They're criticizing the same thing. So sometimes I see some passages and I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to read the same article twice. But this is from Gary Mason here. Help wanted. The federal conservatives are in need of an adult. Ouch. Conservative MP Dean Allison called a news conference last week to give the media an update on his inquiry into the COVID-19 vaccine. If you're like me, you're probably thinking there's an inquiry into the COVID-19 vaccine? Why? Mr. Allison was accompanied by a couple of supporters, the husband and wife team of Sean and Teresa Buckley, who run the COVID Testimony Association. Ms. Buckley stepped to the microphone to make clear what was at stake. Quote, "This is a nonpartisan event," she said, summoning the seriousness of someone announcing the end times. "This is not political. The injury suffered by probably hundreds of thousands of Canadians is not a political event. This is life." She encouraged anyone watching the news conference to print out the posters and cards on the group's website and distribute them at grocery stores and malls. She also urged people to give details of the inquiry to their doctors. Quote, "They need to understand that the time for silence is over," she said. And maybe the Conservatives need to understand that wasting the public's time on senseless overtures like this is why in part they find themselves in the predicament they do now. So far down in the political doldrums, it would take the James Webb telescope to make out even the faintest signs of a party ready to lead. Ouch. I mean, a COVID-19 vaccine inquiry? What's next? A probe into who killed the Canadian penny? An examination of whether the earth could be flat, contrary to reports? Even diehard conservatives are miserable and dejected by the current state of affairs. Quote, "I'm more depressed about the state of conservative politics in Canada right now than I've ever been, and I won't deny it," Ben Woodfinden, former director of communications for federal conservative leader Pierre Poilièvre, recently said on X. Quote, I look at all sorts of conservative camps and factions right now, and I see intellectual poverty everywhere. Mr. Woodfinden's remarks stirred much debate in conservative circles. Federal Liberals, of course, loved it and are delighted by the caustic infighting cannibalizing the Conservative Party at the moment. Guilty as charged. Even though I'm not a federal Liberal. But I am loving and being delighted by the caustic infighting and that's cannibalizing the party. Because I'm petty. You don't have to be a Liberal to love it. You just got to be petty. As always, the golden rule governing these internal imbroglios is a simple one. The problem is always traced back to the leader. Mr. Poilièvre is failing his party on an epic scale. Many conservatives can see this. His negative ratings with the public are at 60%, according to Angus Reid polling. His favorables are heading towards 30% territory. He currently doesn't even enjoy broad support among the conservatives' most reliable demographic, men and those between 35 and 54. Only 33% have a favorable view of the job he's doing. There's a reason Mr. Poilièvre is a man ill-equipped intellectually for the times the nation faces. He is most at ease when he's lobbing gratuitous, often childish insults in the direction of whomever is prime minister, all while wearing a look of smug self-satisfaction. He seems incapable of reading the room. Faced with an existential threat from Canada's closest neighbor and strongest trading partner, Mr. Poilièvre delivers vacuous soundbites about how all would be fine if only he were in charge. This is from a political leader at the top of a party whose priorities, it would appear, include an inquiry into the COVID-19 vaccine. The self-described Freedom Convoy folks and anti-vaxxers must be thrilled they still have someone fighting for them in Ottawa. Mr. Poilièvre recently ignited fresh hostilities within his own party, too, by attacking Caroline Elliott's campaign to win the BC Conservative leadership race. She lost in the fourth and final round by just 60 votes to Carrie Lynn Findlay on May 30th. Last week, Mr. Poilièvre said he was thrilled Miss Findlay won over, quote, the Liberal lobbyists from the East who work on Miss Elliott's campaign. This was a shot at folks like Corey Tonick and Nick Kuvalis, prominent conservative strategists from Ontario who have been critical of Mr. Poilièvre. Many conservatives were dumbstruck and angry that the leader would further fuel the internal dissent, eating the party alive. Talk about a major backfire. Many in the party have seen enough. I talked to one prominent conservative donor in recent days who told me he is done with Mr. Poilièvre. He doesn't believe he's capable of changing. Worse, he believes Mr. Poilièvre doesn't think he has to change. Like Donald Trump, Mr. Poilièvre appears to own a mirror that tells him every day that he is the fairest leader of them all. It is inevitable, however, that one day he will have to come face to face with an unpleasant reality. He's not the person who should be leading the federal conservatives. Boom. Also, Andrew Coyne, Conservatives' performative anger is a symptom of a movement that has lost its way. The conservative activist Ben Woodfinden was in despair. Again, the quote being brought up again. I'm more depressed about the state of conservative politics in Canada right now than I think I've ever been, he lamented in a widely read post online. I look at all sorts of conservative camps and factions right now and I see intellectual poverty everywhere. The comment was occasioned in particular by a new outburst of conservative infighting set off by all people, the conservative leader Pierre Poilièvre. At a Calgary Stampede event, Mr. Poilièvre celebrated the victory of former conservative MP Carrie Lynn Findlay in the recent British Columbia conservative leadership race, a victory he described as being won over liberal lobbyists from out east. That was a reference to campaign of Caroline Elliott, managed by Corey Tonight, whose other client, Conservative Ontario Premier Doug Ford, has a relationship with Mr. Poilièvre that would probably be described as frosty if they had any relationship at all. Mr. Ford might not be Mr. Poilièvre's favorite conservative, but to describe Mr. Tonight, who has worked for conservative caucuses all his adult life as a liberal, is beyond bizarre. But Mr. Woodfinden's comment was not directed only at the conservative leader's disparagement of Miss Elliott's campaign, for whom he also worked. He was describing a more general malaise. It occasioned a great deal of reaction, some of it unintentionally confirming Mr. Woodfinden's thesis, some of it more thoughtful. In the latter camp was an article written by another conservative activist, Howard Anglin. Cheer up was the gist of it. I have never been more bullish about conservative politics, he claimed, citing a riot of new ideas and their growing traction and pointing to the proliferation of conservative journals online. And it's true, there is an animated debate going on right now about what conservatism is, what it believes, and who should get to define it, with vastly different perspectives being expressed. That might be interpreted as a sign of intellectual health, or it might be a sign of intellectual confusion. For Mr. Woodfinden, the problem isn't so much that there are no good ideas from the conservative side as that they are not being translated into policy, or rather they are, just not by conservatives. Quote, the pipeline that turns ideas into policy in this country is working fine, he observes. In an article responding to Mr. Anglin, it just isn't running through us. Instead, it is running through the Liberals under Mark Carney, and sometimes the ideas are suspiciously conservative looking. Conservatives, meanwhile, continue to confine themselves to fighting with each other. Not contests over ideas that might light up the intellectual journals, but fights over cliques and personalities and who's aligned with whom. Ideas, he writes, seem to be used mostly to dress up quarrels that were really about status. Quote, we now assign ideological identity by association and vibe rather than conviction, he goes on. Increasingly, the thing that certifies you as properly conservative is not what you believe, but how you perform. Are you angry enough, bombastic enough, contemptuous of the right enemies, willing to say the outrageous thing? Temperament has become the loyalty test. Being boorish and abrasive now reads as conservative, whilst civility and even temper read as vaguely liberal, and a great many conservatives have internalized this without noticing that this is nonsense. Quote, someone can hold thoroughly conservative views and be written off as a squish for expressing them substantively, civilly, and calmly, while someone with barely a coherent thought in his head sails through on pure aggression because he sounds the way the algorithm has taught us a conservative is supposed to sound. Again, I quote this at some length because I think it absolutely nails the conservative predicament at the moment. Whereas Mr. Woodfinden writes, quote, style has eaten substance, conservatism has become a tantrum, a pose, an affected contrarianism, a clutch of conspiracy theories, all expressed in querulous tone that must be called high choleric. And yet Mr. Woodfinden seems to be at a loss to explain it. The article wanders off into a discussion of the baleful effects of social media and a bit warmed over George Grant about, quote, imported American small government conservatism and how conservatism in Canada has to be about big government because of the things like, quote, our harsh and beautiful environment. Let me attempt a synthesis. The phenomena described above, huge divisions among conservative intellectuals, contrasted with the politics that has little room for ideological debates but lots of nasty infighting between factions, all while the liberals are busy implementing conservative ideas, may not be entirely unrelated. Mr. Poilièvre took a lot of a flack for a stampede comment, as he has often for the harsh divisive approach he brings to politics. The only difference was that this time the nastiness was aimed at other conservatives. But Mr. Poilièvre is more of a symptom than a cause of conservative alienation. A great many conservatives think he's just fine. They like the acid tone, the empty posturing, the smug media bashing. When Mr. Poilièvre munched on an apple as he humiliated a small-town reporter, a lot of conservatives thought they had died and gone to heaven. Figures like Mr. Poilièvre are the kinds of leaders parties elect when they are in a particular frame of mind, and that frame of mind at the moment is uncertain, insecure, lacking direction or purpose or sense of self, but driven only by desire to lash out, to offend, and to attack. It was directed at those outside the party for a while, but was only a matter of time before it turned inward. Mr. Woodfinden writes in Mr. Woodfinden writes in Wonder about the BC leadership campaign, where, quote, the candidates largely agreed on most policy questions, and yet the contest was bitter and tribal and personal. And yet, or, and so, in politics, the less the substantive difference, the more likely a fight is to turn personal. That was the paradox of conservative politics under Stephen Harper. For all of his credentials as a conservative intellectual, a man of ideas, the fate of conservatives under Mr. Harper was to bleed themselves of all they had once believed, to cease all interest in actually changing things in favor of meek obedience to the leader's ever-changing dictates. The party was in power for nearly 10 years under Mr. Harper, yet left scarcely a footprint. Boom. This has admittedly deep historic roots. You don't lose 2 or 3 elections for more than a century, as the Conservatives have done since 1891, without it doing deep damage to your psyche. The Conservatives have suffered for tending to concentrate their support in the less populous regions of the country. They have served as a result as the party of the outs, all those left out for one reason or another of the Liberal coalition. For one reason or another is the operative phrase here. The Conservative coalition has tended to be unwieldy at the best of times, a catch-all of grievances and resentments, many of them regionally based, lacking the glue that binds all Liberals, ambition and the prospect of power. And they are never more divided than when the Liberals fail to offer a convincing boogeyman. The Liberal governments tend to alienate between 2 phases, revolutionary and consolidationist. In revolutionary mode, best represented by the party under the Trudeau père et fils, conservatives can be rallied by the need to save the country from the wreckage of the liberal ideology. But when Liberals turn consolidationist, as under Jean Chrétien and now Mr. Carney, conservatives fall apart. How do you differentiate yourself from a party that is busy stealing policies? What is the conservative raison d'être in such moments? Why be a conservative and not a liberal if the results are the same? Conservatives like to tell themselves they are more principled than the liberals, but more practical than the NDP. The truth is rather different. Conservatives have combined the worst of the other 2 parties, all the commitment to the principle of the liberals and all the electoral success of the NDP. It isn't that the conservatives are too high-minded for power, they just don't seem to know what they want to do with it. Voters can sense these things. The problem has become particularly acute in recent years with the rise of populism and the know-nothing right around the world, but particularly south of the border. The natural and healthy conservative suspicion of, quote, liberal nostrums has curdled into suspicion of all nostrums, including established facts. The historic conservative skepticism of intellectuals, meaning in particular overconfident intellectuals sure of their ability to plan other people's lives, has become an undifferentiated disdain for experts and expertise and ultimately knowledge. With conservatism in disarray, it has been easy for charlatans and hucksters and ideologues of all kinds to wander through the wreckage, peddling this or that as the, quote, true or the new conservatism. Under Donald Trump, the American right has become a movement for big government protectionism and truckling to foreign despots, all things that conservatives used to despise. Here in Canada, the populist moment seems to have passed. In its place have come the so-called new right, youngish, very online, and fond of announcing themselves as the future, a thing usually better demonstrated than stated. They might best described as ideological pre-Raphaelites, both in their swooning earnestness and their undistinguished hankering after a conservatism untainted by 2 centuries of contact with Western liberalism, not so much post-liberal as pre-liberal. Thus, while conservatism has traditionally devoted itself to restraining the excesses of liberalism, notably in the latter 20th century enthusiasm for the state as the engineer of social and economic change, the, quote, new conservatives simply want to harness it to their own ends, to be as ruthless in using the state to serve right-wing cultural causes as the Trudeaus were in the service of the left. It's not about whether the government should meddle in people's lives, in other words, but who should do the meddling and in which direction. This is a strange position to take for a party that has spent most of the past 130-odd years out of government. It is an even stranger one if it ever hopes to spend more time in there in the future. Boom. As well, here's something I keep on mentioning about party fundraising. According to Alex Boutier of Global News, amid anemic poll numbers and messy public infighting, some conservatives worry that fundraising numbers are also taking a hit as Pierre Poilièvre struggles to keep his party together. And as I keep on saying, the thing that will get him kicked out of the party is bad fundraising numbers. Because again, the Conservative Party of Canada, under the current iteration, doesn't actually care about whether or not it forms government. I mean, it would love to have its hands on the purse strings and make all the changes it has when it has its political wet dreams. But if the Conservative Party can keep on raking in 60 to $60 million a quarter to up to about $100 million a quarter during elections, and keep all the high-level people in the party in the lifestyle that they've grown accustomed to for doing very little or no work that's serious. It seems that that's what they're about now, especially if they have a whole media industry that is dedicated to covering it and never criticizing it and telling everybody how wonderful and cute and smart they are. Just saying. The Conservatives have long maintained a fundraising advantage over the Liberal Party while in government and on the opposition benches. That edge is a point of pride for the Conservative Party, which often cites it as proof of the party's broad appeal, even in the face of poor polling numbers. But with Q2 fundraising results expected to be publicly released this month, multiple sources tell Global News that behind the scenes there's concern about the results. A Global News analysis of fundraising data filed to Elections Canada suggests that in the first 6 months of 2026, Poilièvre personally attended 7 party fundraisers. Over the same period in 2024, when the Conservatives were riding high in the polls, he attended 27. Poilièvre's team is worried about the fundraising right now. They're worried about it because if it's going as bad as it seems, 1, it's a bad image. He's under siege right now, and 2, they need the money, said one longstanding Conservative insider, particularly since even though they raised $99 million, they spent so much that they ended up 14 in the hole. But hey, let them have the purse strings and run the Canadian economy. They'll be great at it. The source spoke on the condition that they not be named to speak frankly about internal party dynamics. Global News spoke to 7 other longtime Conservatives for the story, including multiple sources in Poilièvre's orbit. A senior Conservative source close to Poilièvre downplayed the concerns and said they expect a, quote, strong showing when the numbers are made public at the end of the month, although they acknowledge that it's harder to pull donations while the Liberals have a majority and a snap election is unlikely. Asked if it was a problem for Poilièvre that these dissatisfied elements were speaking to reporters, the source said, "It's just part of the game. I'd like to think that there's a real genuine desire on their part to see us do better, but I don't know their motives," the source said. "Would I prefer to just be able to talk about all the things we're doing to get ready for an eventual campaign and hold the Liberals to account? Of course. But this is what it is. It's just part of it." Sarah Fisher, the Conservatives' communication director, noted that the Conservatives raised $9.4 million in the first quarter of 2026 from 40,410 individual Canadians, their second best non-election first quarter fundraising result on record. Second best non-election first quarter fundraising result on the record. In a statement to Global News, Fisher explained the party continued, quote, to see strong fundraising performance in Q2. Pierre Poilièvre has been focused on holding Mark Carney to account and fighting making life more affordable for Canadians throughout this parliamentary session. Multiple sources described a disheartened party doubtful Poilièvre can win the next election after his precipitous fall from 2024's Prime Minister in waiting to opposition leader under another Liberal majority. Poilièvre's critics within the movement would like to see him step down of his own volition or the Conservative caucus to make him go, as they did with their previous leader, Aaron O'Toole. Neither scenario seems likely, with Poilièvre vowing to fight on and a considerable number of MPs remaining in his camp, because the people who like the crap that he puts out like it a lot, particularly within the party. While he's at the helm, however, internal party squabbles are making their way into the public eye. Anthony Koch, a Conservative commentator who worked for Poilièvre's leadership campaign, recently penned an op-ed in the National Post taking aim at the always online Conservative activist set. And we read that into the record last week. Quote, the Canadian right, meanwhile, has cultivated an entire class of commentators and activists who almost seem offended by the idea of broad public appeal, Koch wrote. They stare at persuasion, they mock professionalism, and they dismiss anyone who accurately describes the state of play as insufficiently conservative. Poilièvre himself recently drew criticism Poilièvre himself recently drew criticism for suggesting that the longtime party stalwarts were insufficiently conservative. Earlier this month in Calgary, Poilièvre congratulated Carrie Lynn Findlay on her victory over Liberal lobbyists from out east in the BC Conservative leadership contest. I think somebody needs to do a wellness check on Pierre Poilièvre tonight, shot back on the Curse of Politics podcast Monday. It makes no sense to me for him to be going around the country picking fights with Conservatives. And it doesn't. Finally, from the Hill Times today by Abbas Rana. And this is one that's particularly revealing. Persistent internal squabbles amongst senior Conservatives have dampened the morale of caucus members, staff, and party volunteers who devote countless hours to helping the party succeed and win elections, raising concerns that the infighting could hurt the party's prospects going forward and ultimately jeopardize leader Pierre Poilièvre's political future. The morale is in the absolute, and this is not my word, this is from the quote, the morale is in the absolute shitter, completely, said a Conservative MP. It's very, very unproductive and it's going to hurt us, said another Conservative MP, a staunch supporter of the leader, who spoke to the Hill Times on a not for attribution basis to offer their candid views. Quote, it's destructive to our movement. For lots of people who help on campaigns and put the little free time they have towards political victory, it's a big turnoff, and that's why it's destructive. The start of the current round of infighting can be traced back to the 2025 federal election campaign when veteran Conservative strategist Coyne repeatedly urged Poilièvre's Battle River Crowfoot, Alberta campaign. So they put the writing when they mentioned the name here. Pierre Poilièvre, who represents Battle River Cloverfoot, who represents Battle River Crowfoot, Alberta, when he urged his campaign to pivot its messaging towards United States President Donald Trump's tariff threats rather than focusing primarily on affordability and law and order issues. Tonight argued that Canada-US trade dispute had become the top issue for many Canadians, but Poilièvre largely maintained his emphasis on the cost of living and crime during the campaign. Poilièvre and his senior campaign officials believe tonight's repeated public interventions distracted from the campaign's core message and dominated media coverage, creating the perception of divisions within the Conservative caucus. Until early January 2025, the Conservatives held a lead of more than 20 percentage points in national opinion polls, and many polling aggregators' seat projections predicted Poilièvre would win a landslide majority government with more than 200 seats. Instead, the party finished with 144, following the Liberal leadership change where now Prime Minister Mark Carney took over from the deeply unpopular Justin Trudeau, who announced his resignation on January 6, 2025. Despite spending close to $100 million in 2025, the Conservative Party still ended up in second place. Pundits and political insiders say that one of the key reasons for the loss was the campaign's failure to devote sufficient attention to the escalating trade dispute between Canada and the US, whose economic relationship accounts for $1 trillion of annual trade in goods and services and hundreds of thousands of jobs on both sides of the border. Other analysis from people seem to have indicated that the Conservatives, despite spending that much money, spent very little of it on public opinion polling during the campaign, and everybody's wondering why. And again, if you didn't spend a lot of money on public opinion polling and you spent that much money, what the heck did you spend it on? Like, honestly. Wow. But yeah. Fast forward to the Calgary Stampede earlier this month, and again, they're going to talk about Pierre, making that comment about the Liberal lobbyists from the East. And it says here that Coyne, because this was an attack against him, of course, managed the campaign of Caroline Elliott, but he also ran Ontario Premier Doug Ford's 3 consecutive Ontario election victories and served as Prime Minister Stephen Harper's Director of Communications. Poilièvre's comment triggered a wave of reaction from veteran Conservatives, starting with Elliott, who in a social media video expressed her disappointment with the federal leader's comments. Elliott said that she had supported Poilièvre, including during his leadership review in January, and accused him of dividing the party when he should be working to unite it. Several people who previously worked with Poilièvre either during his leadership campaign or the opposition leader's office had joined Elliott's campaign, including Anthony Koch, a senior advisor during Poilièvre's own leadership race in 2022, and Bed Woodfinton, who served as Poilièvre's chief spokesperson in the opposition leader's office. Poilièvre's former communications director, Katie Merrifield, is also a close friend of Elliott's. On July 9, Cox wrote an article with the headline, quote, "I'm a conservative who wants to win. That doesn't make me a liberal," to offer his reaction to Poilièvre's comment at the Stampede. Quote, "I am sick to death of being told that wanting Conservatives to win elections somehow makes me a liberal. It's one of the stupidest ideas ever to infect the Canadian political right, and there have been some doozies in the recent years, and has become an excuse for failure," Koch wrote in his National Post op-ed. Apparently, if you care whether Conservatives can actually form government, you're a fake conservative. If you think candidates should avoid obvious own goals, you're a sellout. And if you think messaging matters, well, you're weak. If you suggest that screaming into the void isn't a political strategy, you are accused of wanting liberal light. In the popular Curse of Politics podcast last week, Tanique offered his own reaction. Quote, when you elect leaders who are completely and utterly unaccomplished prior to entering politics and who have entered politics in their 20s, you're going to be very vulnerable to running against someone who has actually done something with their life. And why Andrew Scheer is still sitting in the caucus is the same reason why Pierre Poilièvre will end up sitting in the caucus after he's done being leader, because he is unemployable in any other job, Tonight added. Nick Kouvalis, a top progressive conservative strategist in Ontario, blasted Poilièvre on X for more than a week after the conservative leader made his comments at the Stampede. Quote, again, this is in the quote, Pierre Poilièvre can go fuck himself. Fight, 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 fight. Wrote Kouvalis on X on July 6th. Quote, I've gone from being a big supporter to being disappointed, but still a supporter. Now he's gone out of his way to make me his opponent. Here, in addition to infighting amongst conservative strategists, the lack of message, discipline, and policy issues among caucus members is also raising concerns within the party. The most recent example came when Ontario Conservative MP Leslyn Lewis criticized a $13 billion data center in Alberta that Premier Danielle Smith celebrated because it would create 300 jobs and 3,000 people would be employed during the construction process. Alberta is also set to collect hundreds of $millions in taxes and royalties. Quote, before the federal government celebrates another AI announcement, Canadians deserve to know how this data center will actually be built when Canada is already facing serious constraints in energy infrastructure, grid capacity, engineering capacity, and skilled labor, Lewis wrote on X. AI data centers require enormous amounts of reliable power, specialized construction, advanced cooling, transmission infrastructure, cybersecurity, and technical expertise. After 11 years of failing to build the energy infrastructure Canada needs, the government must explain whether this project is truly viable and who will ultimately own, control, and benefit from the infrastructure it precedes. Conservative MP Michelle Ruppel-Garner shot back in response to Lewis's post, quote, it's a great investment in Alberta and it's squarely in their jurisdiction. We have some of the best minds on grid management and capacity in the country. I'm sure any of our colleagues in the provincial government will be happy to sit down with you and walk you through the project. Wow. Jeez. Conservative sources told the Hill Times that another factor negatively affecting the morale of caucus members, staffers, and party grassroots is the ongoing floor crossings of Conservative MPs joining the Liberals. So far, 4 Conservative MPs have left their party to join the Liberals, and 1 has accepted a Senate appointment. And again, they keep on forgetting Kathy Wagenthal, who just decided to up and leave after a year. No reason. The 4 MPs are Chris D'Entremont, Matt Genereux, Marilyn Gladu, and Michael Ma. Richard Martel, most recently Quebec Conservative MP, resigned from his seat on July 7th after accepting a Senate appointment to sit as an independent. With his departure, the Conservative seats in the House are now reduced to 139 MPs. Rumors still persist about more Conservative MPs leaving the caucus to join the Liberals or accept Senate appointments. Referring to the party's polling numbers in 2023 and early 2025, when the Conservatives held a lead of more than 20 percentage points, Conservative MPs and senior party officials told the Hill Times there was once widespread enthusiasm within the party for Poilièvre. However, after the 2025 election loss and events since then, including the most recent infighting and floor crossings, much of that momentum and excitement has faded. Instead of fighting amongst themselves, sources said Conservatives should be focused on Carney, who, despite having been in office for about 17 months, continues to enjoy strong public approval. These sources said that many caucus members are frustrated by the ongoing infighting and concerned about the party's polling numbers, but few are prepared to voice those concerns publicly. That, however, could change in the coming weeks or months, sources added. They say the ongoing infighting may not significantly affect the party's standing within the broader public at this time, but it is damaging to the conservative movement internally. Quote, this is terrible for us and people recognize that. It never ends, said a Conservative MP. It's constant. It's a combination of one versus the other as well as whatever's expedient. People are grifters and they will go to wherever the power is. This isn't over. It's too deep for it to be over. But others hope the infighting will end in the coming days as people take vacation and enjoy the summer recess. Quote, I hope the story dies in the high temperatures of July and the slow broil of summer, said a Conservative MP. It won't. A senior Conservative interviewed for this article said they generally support Poilièvre's style of politics, but believe he showed poor political judgment in his comment at the Stampede. The source says it's always difficult for a party leader to navigate the aftermath of an election defeat, pointing to former Prime Minister Stephen Harper after the Conservatives lost the 2004 federal election. At the time, many believed Harper was unlikely to lead the party to victory, but just 2 years later, he did. The source argued that one of Poilièvre's biggest challenges in taking on Carney is that the Prime Minister is a red Tory and occupies much of the Conservative Party's traditional political ground. Well, I mean, yes, that might be possible, but he only could do that because the federal Conservatives decided to vacate that ground totally and completely in pursuit of the PPC voter and their repeated donations. And that's what you get. Same. They said Carney has embraced a number of policies Conservatives have put forward for years, making it more difficult for Poilièvre to draw sharp policy contrasts. Carney is essentially a progressive Conservative, which causes us all sorts of problems, said the senior Conservative, because we're not well designed to fight against a progressive Conservative, except Aaron O'Toole, who he had no problem dealing with internally. Did I say that out loud? Oh. At the same time, the source said that although the NDP elected a new leader more than 100 days ago, the party has yet to gain meaningful traction with Canadians. Traditionally, they said when NDP support increases, Liberal support tends to decline, a dynamic that often benefits the Conservatives by improving their chances of winning additional seats. Unfortunately, that's not happening right now. Because if you look at 338canada.com, the NDP has been doing better, according to the vote projection. At this time last year, shortly after this time last year, the NDP were polling at 6%. Not this time last year, around April 30th of 2025. Nope. Yes, we're polling at about 6%, and they are now polling at 10%. Which is very interesting. And here I'm going to show you this graph from 338. Right here. So the NDP has gone from about 6% here to 10%. Now, if we're looking here, since about February, 8 to 10. So they've gotten 4 points about here. The Conservatives, when the NDP were at 6, were at 41. The Conservatives are at 35 now. So the Conservatives have lost 6 points. The NDP have gained 4. They're gaining mostly from the Conservatives at the current moment. And again, if you were looking at seat projections, Liberals at 207, Conservatives at 99, Bloc 21, NDP 14, Greens at 2. So, yes, there's a lot of people that are even looking at sort of like, maybe some Liberals numbers declining, or maybe a spread between the Liberals and Conservatives being narrow, but it's not because the Conservatives are gaining. And the NDP's growth seems to be it clawing its vote back from the Conservatives in those ridings where there was an NDP Conservative split. So there's nothing out there on the horizon that's really helping Pierre. So if all of this is happening, if you got all this infighting, and if the fundraising numbers are going poorly, and the NDP is getting stronger and is yielding no benefit to the Conservatives, and the Liberals are flooding the zone with content and policy, and the Conservatives can't seem to find their way to even pick just one and focus on it and criticize it. I mean, what do you do? What do you do? Again, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when Pierre is going to go. I would be very surprised if he lasts the rest of the year. I would be, because it's not getting better. It's just not getting better. About the only people who want Pierre Poilièvre to remain leader of the Conservative Party right now are currently elected federal Liberals. And the ecosystem of online pro-Poilièvre CPC influencers who apparently live off him. And that's about it. That's about it at the moment. So yeah, he's not long for this political world unless there's something major that shifts, that gives him an opening that he can climb through. And for this particular set of politics or way of doing politics could um, uh, fit again. But the moment appears to have passed him by. And like I said, even within his own party, there's a lot of people who don't believe that he will ever be prime minister, and it's time to cut bait. Um, Listening to some commentary, however, liberals might want to stating that liberals might want to be careful what they wish for, particularly with getting Pierre to go, because if he does go, well, you know, it can lead to someone more competent or someone at least who interacts with the federal government in a different way or opposes them in a different way. That's one thing. The other thing, having the constant political fentanyl pumped into our society that Pierre does, may not make it worth it for him to have him there, even though it means increased odds that the liberals would win. But yeah, again, that's the situation that we have here. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of liberals now, after seeing Pierre Poilièvre in action over the past year and some, that actually have no problem with him staying. Actually, they would like him to stay as long as he likes. um, but yeah, interesting stuff going on, kids and cubs. But that's the end of this episode of today. That's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Sorry for all the technical weirdness that happened today, but we hope that you've still managed to enjoy the show, because we still managed to enjoy making it for you. Remember, sharing is caring, and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do, especially when you include a little word of your own as to why our content resonates with you, because you are influencers in your own circle, and people are more likely to click on it if they hear from you why it is that they should. So thank you for doing that, kids and cubs. If you would like to help us, you can do so by scanning this QR code, which will bring you to our YouTube page, where you can find our buttons like, share, and subscribe. Please smash with them. Please also find our notification bell and click all so you can be notified when we have new content. And of course, if you are not watching live and you happen to be watching on your tablet or iPhone less than 7 days, or I should say fewer than 7 days after we broadcast this live, if you can swipe left on the comment section and grant us some hype points, we would be very grateful. And you can do that up to 3 times a week. It helps smaller audience channels like ourselves find a broader audience. And we thank you for your help in that matter. Another way you can help us, kids and cubs, is by scanning this QR code, because if you believe that our show deserves some financial support because our content does resonate with you, we would be grateful to receive an enthusiastic expression of encouragement on your part for us to keep going and to, you know, produced more content of this kind, and of hopefully ever improving quality. Or if you just feel sorry for us and want us to get off Restream faster. Again, I'm not proud. I'll take the money. So, but all jokes aside, if you could scan this QR code, we would really appreciate it. It would bring you to the Emergency Hydration Fund here at the Beaver Lodge, where you can fill the cup with some beaver moistener, because a happy beaver is a moist beaver. So a little cup of hot chocolate for your favorite beaver to say, add a beaver, or a cup of hot coffee for your favorite grizzly to say, add a grizz. And that would be very appreciated. It helps us produce and write and research and all that good stuff. And if there's anything left over, of course, it helps us with the production costs, because we have internet fees and subscription fees and all that kind of stuff for various services in order to bring this to you, like, for example, Restream and Descript, which I need to buy if I want to keep on editing our podcasts for audio in ways that don't take me 6 hours a podcast to do. Apologies to all of those who are starting to find us again on podcasts and have had another interruption while I'm trying to learn a new software. But hopefully I will be able to get back to you as soon as possible with new podcast shows. But yeah, It takes a lot of money to look this cheap, as Dolly Parton would say. So if you if you would like to help us, we would be very grateful. And we get about 95 to 97% of your donation when you donate through the Eager Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund. We also have stickers, super chat, and memberships on YouTube. We get about 70% of that. And we also have Kits and Cubs. Our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. If you would like to make a direct donation from your bank to our bank and bypass the US CE Tech Bros because you're doing the Buy Canadian thing. And that way we get 100% of your donation. And a little shout out as well to all the people who tuned in to watch the live watch party for Donald Trump. It was well watched in terms of numbers and for revenue for us. That live watch party did help us substantially for the month. I don't. So if there's anybody that donated through super chats or all that kind of stuff on that show, thank you, thank you, thank you so very much. We had a scare over the course of the weekend because some people had put some copyright claims against our show, that episode, and were blocking it from receiving money, or at least the money coming to us. But they also blocked it for about 24 hours for even being shown. And it got reinstated at some point because we filed the appropriate disputes. We had a company suggest that content that it was either in Japanese or in Chinese was used in our video, and it wasn't. And we had another one claiming that stuff used in German was in our show, and again, it just wasn't. And we were trying to file appeals and disputes, and they offer you options like you already own the content or using it under fair content rules or all that type of stuff. But there was no button for the content. The content that is being claimed that is used in copyright violation doesn't actually figure in this video. That might be one they would like to add. I'm just saying. But yes, when I woke up this morning and looked at it, it seems that all the bans had been lifted off it, and we can show the video, and the video has been reinstated on our on our platform and on our YouTube page. So if you happened to be looking for it because you heard about it from members of the Dan Fam and it wasn't there, that's why it disappeared, and it is back. So please, if you have the opportunity to go watch it, we would be very grateful to get some extra views on that, given that we had our opportunity to be promoting it over the course of the weekend when people usually have more time kind of taken away from us right when the news story was hot with those false claims. Again, it's frequent. When you're in this business, it would appear either because people don't like you, or either because just claim everything that's out there as a copyright strike, and maybe some people won't. Maybe enough people won't dispute it, and we'll get some money that way just by numbers and volume. These are various types of challenges, as well as with like algorithms changing overnight and nobody telling you that they had or why. For example, these are all challenges that come with this business. So I am doing with them as best as I can, and eventually succeeding. But it adds more work. I won't lie; it adds more work, and it adds more worry as well. But at the end of the day, it seems like all's well ends well. So there you go, Kits and Cubs. Because democracy is something that you do, couple of petitions that we have for you if you would like to put your signature on those. One of them is our commons.ca petition number E7395. Which is being sponsored by Elizabeth May in the House of Commons. It currently has 26,279 signatures, and the purpose of this petition is to call on the House of Commons to not fund Stornoway anymore as a residence for the leader of the official opposition. The other petition that we had for you, Kits and Cubs, is if you would like CBC to have to maintain some type of hockey coverage, particularly on Saturday evenings. That Rendezvous Hockey Night in Canada, that's been a tradition in Canada for quite a long time. Then there's a band in Saskatchewan that has started a petition at change.org for that. And maybe you would like to support this. And I have it right there in the chat for you. And that petition, Kits and Cubs, happens to have 16,228 signatures. And finally, last but not least, as we have been mentioning on the show, Kits and Cubs, we have the Red Cross 2026 Manitoba Flood Appeal. And if you would like to help our brothers and sisters in Manitoba who are going through a lot with what they have been experiencing, you can go to give.redcross.ca give.redcross.ca/page/26MB for Manitoba, FL for flood, and A for appeal. So give.redcross.ca/page/26MBFLA in order to make a donation. And if you would prefer to donate by phone or via email, you can do that by contacting them at 1-800-418-1111. That is 1-800-418-1111. Or you can reach them by email at wecare@redcross.ca. That is wecare@redcross.ca. And I thank you for all that you do to help our fellow Canadians who are having a difficult time. Our queen seems to be. I'm seeing all the cock emojis. I'm getting there. I'm getting there, kids and cubs. So there you go. Words of wisdom. Listen. This is a little more personal one for me, but sometimes there are people from the past who knock on your door and want to come back in your life. And you always have to ask the question, do I want to open that door? Especially if you're good with the way things are now. And that happened with this situation. In this particular case, I am very, 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 very happy I decided to open the door. I took a chance. And it's weird words of wisdom because, it doesn't always work out. But I guess my words of wisdom is sometimes it does work out. And the one that it does work out, it feels wonderful. So, sometimes you got to take a chance and open that door. That's all I'm saying. Could be a tough world out there, kids and cubs. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now, Kitty Lane, at the count of 3, if you would all get together and give me a little audience participation and say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Let me hear it. Oh, yes, that's the good stuff there. And with just a little F.U. Trump edge in there to make me happy. So, since you asked so nicely and patriotically, how can I not approve? I live to serve. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs, a little bit of news of a Canadian who makes us proud, and I believe Kit suggested this to us. This is by Jesse Uat of CTV News. When 10-year-old Elise Clayton walked through the doors of the Halifax Stanfield International Airport after winning a gold medal in an international dance competition, she got a surprise she never expected. The young dancers community of North Preston came in droves to welcome Clayton home after she secured the top part in the World Dance Championships in Dublin, Ireland. Members of the community hired a transit bus to bring residents to the airport from North Preston, with many community members carrying signs and flowers for the young star. Quote, "It feels so good seeing all my family and friends, and yeah, thank you all for coming," Clayton told CTV News on Wednesday. Clayton says she hopes to become a professional dancer in Los Angeles in the future. And here there happens to be an image of the very accomplished young lady that we will put there with her really big trophy that actually really cool looking, and of course a framed certificate indicating that she was the winner here in that event. And of course, as a fellow dancer myself, I got to give props because I never came anywhere close to being that good. According to CBC's Juliana Grillo de Lambari, she says, taking the stage at the Dance World Cup in Dublin was a nerve-wracking experience for 12-year-old Elise Clayton, but it didn't stop her from putting on a gold medal performance. Her hip-hop choreography titled A Game earned international praise and won her the Best Solo Dance category at the multi-genre competition. "I like how it just shows my personality," Clayton said. "I like grooving, but also hitting hard." When she returned to Nova Scotia, a crowd of supporters packed the airport to cheer her home. The celebration continued this weekend during the annual North Preston Day Parade, where floats were decorated to honor her victory. Quote, "Feels good like seeing all my family and friends in my whole community," she said. Her grandfather, Neville Provo, said her success is already inspiring other local children. Quote, "When she gets on that dance floor, she knows what time it is," Provo said, adding that the entire family is incredibly proud. Clayton has been dancing for as long as she can remember. "A lot of people say I just started dancing," she said. I was born to dance, and like I have always been dancing." Her uncle, Dwayne Provo, called her one of the best dancers he has ever seen and hopes her win shows other kids what is possible. "With her winning the gold, it's just a stepping stone to help others achieve other things," he said. "You put your mind to it, you can do it." And unfortunately, they didn't include any links to her performance so we can see her dance. Oh, darn. Well, I'm going to have to go look at that. And if you want to go look at that too, it's Elise Clayton, Elayce Clayton. And hopefully we can see her get her groove on and see her hit hard. But what a fantastic accomplishment. So there you go. And what a way for the community to get together to make someone feel important and special after having had such an accomplishment. So congratulations to not only Elise as a Canadian who made us proud, but to the members of her community who showed her the love. Because, getting some love at home always makes the heart feel very warm. Some more words of wisdom. There you go. That's all I got for you today, kids and cubs. Amour et bisous. And we will see you tomorrow, most likely at the regular time, because I don't have any schedule conflicts or anything like that. And I am back home. So hopefully that means I will be back to a regular time tomorrow. Until then, have a beaverific day, everyone. Bye.